affected by the Uasin Gishu County, Finland and Canada's come have vowed to disrupt the devolution conference set to kick off today if they don't get their money back. Speaking after holding a meeting in Eldoret, the parents said they'll continue holding peaceful protest until the county government refunds their cash, further calling on President William Ruto to intervene.
Bwana B, kuja mbele yetu tuambie president amesema hivi na hivi. Lakini mambo ya vichorochoro hatutakubali na tutaendelea na maandamano. Watoto wetu wako nyumbani kwa sababu yako Mandako. Tumekuwa maskini zaidi ya vile tulikuwa kwa sababu ya wewe Mandako.
We are not calling off this peaceful demonstration.
To the whole country, including the president, the deputy, that if nothing is going to be done from now till tomorrow, checks to be handed to each and every parent here because they paid it, they gave the check, they deposited, they gave the cash, whichever the means they used. There is no negotiations of any other form. No refund.
The Ministry of Health has rolled out a 2-week nationwide health facility census aimed at identifying gaps in the healthcare sector and enhancing service delivery. Health CSOs and Nahomichi and other stakeholders say that the assessment will provide evidence for policy formulation, planning and programming within the health sector.
From the county governments in terms of equipment support, human resource support, infrastructure support. We do not want to do it selectively, and that is why we have this health assessment, that as an outcome, then we know exactly what facility needs to be supported with what.
It is important for us to be able to undertake this exercise, for us to be able to know the services that are being offered by our health facilities. But more critical is also the resources that are present in the various facilities in terms of health infrastructure, health equipment, and most important of all, the health workforce present.
We have a noble task for ensuring all Kenyans have access to high quality health services when and where they need them and without suffering financial catastrophe. This health facility census activity will contribute towards that goal and help us better operationalize all the primary care networks in Kenya.
Parliamentary leadership from the National Assembly and Senate have been tasked with processing a motion to legally establish the Dialogue Team. Dialogue Committee team leaders Azimio's Kalonzo Musyoka and Kenya Kwanza's Kimani Ichung'wah say the technical teams have also been tasked to fast frame their agenda items for consideration ahead of the next sitting on Monday next week.
Our teams have been ready, but I think that our friends are also now ready, and we want them to engage so that they can look. As you remember, both sides had their set of agendas, and it's important they get synchronized. And that we leave to the technical team to be able to provide the way forward. Once that is agreed, I think we'll be on our way.
As much as we have individually briefed our teams, we now want to brief them on what our expectations as a team are to help us realize the objectives that we have out of this dialogue team in the quickest time possible. We have also indicated that we are here to engage in good faith, in line with our laws and our constitution, and we want to believe we are all here in the interest of the Kenyan people and the Kenyan state.
And public service vehicle operators have embarked on a plan to establish a driving school for PSV drivers in a bid to complement efforts by the government to enhance road safety. Matatu Owners Association chairperson Albert Karakasha has urged drivers to ensure safety on the roads and dismissed attempts by the government to regulate fares.
Tutakuwa na shule ya kutrain madereva wa matatu kwa sababu ukiangalia hatuna shule ya kutrain madereva wa matatu. Tukiweza kutrain madereva wa matatu, mambo ya ajali itarudi chini. Tumesema mambo ya bus fare wataangalia, lakini watu waweze kuelewa kuwa mafuta imepanda, tutalipisha kulingana na vile vitu zimepanda juu, lakini tuta make sure that tunaangalia moderate, hatutakuwa ile ya kuumiza watu.
Any driver is certified has to go through NTSA for credibility. Now the biggest question is this: even if you're going to retrain, where is the National School of Public Transportation? And that's why our chairman has come with this genius proposal, and we seeking collaboration with the government to make sure such an institution it is established so that all of us can participate.
Nyandarua police raided a farm belonging to a 59-year-old farmer at Olkalau constituency where they uprooted bang estimated to be worth 700,000 shillings. Nyandarua Central Police Commander Stella Cherono said the raid was conducted after a complaint by a resident who informed the police about their crop.
It was a shamba of one man called Paul Mwange Kariuki where we found the cannabis sativa had been planted. The officers uprooted at least 2,500 stems of the bank.
I'm Dennis Aseta. Good morning.
102.5 Spice FM, Kisumu.
The following takes place from 6 a.m. to 10 a.m. every weekday on Spice FM.
Congratulations. You've seen the hand of the Lord. Thank you very much. I've earned another title today, this morning at Spice FM. Mama Justice, I don't mind it.
Joel in Kericho.
Salama sana Heri, habari ya asubuhi.
Salama bwana, mambo namna gani?
Salama kabisa bro.
Mambo ya Inamoi kuliendaje?
Mambo ya Inamoi, vile nilikwambia ndugu yangu, alienda asubuhi na ile gari ya kwanza.
I must have missed it.
So did I.
Even if somebody was to render you irrelevant, there is still work you can do.
Okay, sawa.
I deserve to keep you accountable. You deserve to give me a report. You don't work for me. No, I don't work for you. You work for me.
Do you like that Freudian slip? Lovely, isn't it? Thank you very much.
The Situation Room, Kenya's biggest conversation.
This is one of the hottest show that we can ever miss any morning, and it's a show that really gives a real situation in the Situation Room.
Pleasure to be here. Thank you guys so much. Nduthai, nice meeting you. Even beautiful in person more than in photos.
Say that again. Character is like pregnancy. You cannot hide it. You know, people are hiding here and there, you know, but after 2-3 months, 5 months, now you see. So that is why the attitude that you were showing us, you're pregnant.
It's like what my grandmother would say. You cannot pickpocket a naked man.
How's that? It's communal, isn't it?
No comment.
Good morning. Welcome to Tuesday, the second day of the week, and it looks like we're going to be able to pack a punch when it comes to movement. Today, a little bit of movement going on Jogoro this morning as you're getting out towards Landis and then into the CBD via way of the Kamkunji roundabout. We've got some movement on Uhuru Highway. It's going to take you into the CBD out towards Westlands with not too much of an issue. Let's take a look, see what's going on the Thika Superhighway. Yes, we know schools are closed, so that means that a lot of movement that we would normally see is reduced significantly. All right, some movement on the Thika Superhighway. Nothing happening at the Pangani Underpass. A rare sighting of free and clear movement right around that tunnel. So you might want to use this opportunity to get out real quick. Not much happening there. Coming out of Westlands, you're good as well. On James Gishuru, that bottleneck is not going to cause any problems, at least not for now. Some movement as well on North Airport Road is coming off of Cabanas as it is taking out towards the Outer Ring Junction and then on towards the Eastern Bypass. However, it looks like we're starting off Tuesday morning just right. Let's keep it so and see what happens about half hour or so. And let's talk on Spice FM KE on Twitter.
This is The Situation Room, the home of hard-hitting political commentary and penetrating insights about the state of the nation. This is a talk radio experience like no other. The Situation Room, a place for hard truths, debates, and elevated conversations. The Situation Room, witty, political, engaging, deep, controversial. In the room, we have C.T. Muga, researcher, academic, seasoned political observer, a fountain of wisdom in these politically uncertain times. Ndu Okoh, Nigerian by birth, Kenyan by choice, communications expert, Pan-Africanist, a truth seeker and believer in people power, and Eric Latiff, agent provocateur, the man in the chair, seasoned journalist, news hound, a man who believes in punching up, not down. This is the Situation Room, the only way to start your day.
It's the 15th of August 2023, and this is where we are starting the day. Good morning. Good morning. Yeah, everything is in place. I'm just checking. Yes, it is. How are you? CT, good morning.
Morning, Do.
How are you?
Fine.
Come on, CT.
Ask the question again.
CT, good morning. How are you?
Good morning, Do. How are you today?
I am fine, thank you.
Very good to hear.
Well done.
Thank you.
How was Monday?
Monday, I think, was good.
After, we left here.
Yes, it was good.
Okay.
It was good.
Super duper.
Yes,
hey, something. What did I want to tell you? I want to tell something very important. I can't remember.
It'll come. Don't stress it. It'll come.
I'll remember. Don't worry, I'll remember.
Yes, and then you will tell me. Yes.
I will. Oh, right, yeah, it's about that Shang. So sitting out here with, one of the hosts from Vibes, and there's some words that I just that are supposed to be Swahili, but they're not Swahili, and it's Sheng, and it's just confusing. Ednah is the one who brought that story. I don't know, Kozeze, Kazoze, some things I don't even understand. That one, she doesn't even know what it means. I was talking about the evolution of language, and some things that you would have not known to be language, but they actually are, or part of a language that you didn't know. That even you, who speaks Swahili, and you heard them, would be confused completely if it was Swahili.
Inaitwa epistemology.
Epistemology ndio hiyo. Kazoze. Sindio? Thank you. Kazoze. It means what? Do you even know what it means, Ednah? No. It just sounds nice. It rolls off the tongue in a very, very nice way. But I've confirmed that it's not an insult, so I'm okay to be saying it. Stop it. So as the evolution of language, very, very interesting. Things that we say today that we didn't understand, that we wouldn't have, said before, or we wouldn't have understood what they were before. The evolution of language, top of my mind this morning. Okay, welcome to Kenya's biggest conversation. It's 12 minutes after 6 o'clock. Ndu and CT here with you. Today marks day one of the Devolution Conference that happens in Uasin Gishu County, and that is where one Eric Latiff is this morning and also through the rest of the week. So until he comes back, he'll be letting us know what's going on there and how things are opening up as we move along. Ednah, switch me off. I can hear. Yeah. All right, so we'll be getting updates from him in terms of what governors and not county units and everybody's discussing as we go through the week. So that's where he is this week. So just in case you're wondering, we're doing this without him this week, but he's on the other end of the pond making things happen. Okay, so very interesting conversations lined up today. Some things that we'll be talking about at 8 o'clock today. The Kenya Power MD will be with us. Many questions about power. There are many things that have been said. There are many allegations that have been thrown out there. There are many things that are yet to be understood about exactly what's going on with power. But what he's going to come and do today is address the high cost of electricity in Kenya. Engineer Dr. Joseph Siror, who is the Managing Director and CEO of Kenya Power, will be in the hot seat at 8 a.m. today, and we'll have that very important conversation with him. All right, subsidies for no subsidies. Today is the 15th of August. We did see yesterday that IPRA did the thing, right? And fuel prices will not change because there has been the reintroduction of subsidies. Okay, how exactly is this money being spent by government? What exactly is being done? Understanding Ruto's economic agenda and financial approach. Moses Banda, who is the Financial Services Advisor of the Presidential Economic Transformation Secretariat, will be with us at 7 o'clock to make us understand, okay, what is the plan economically for Kenya into this new administration? And we'll have that conversation with Moses Banda at 7 o'clock. At 9 o'clock, petty offenders usually get the short end of the stick when it comes to justice. A petty offender who may be denied bail, may be asked to pay a fine and really doesn't have it, ends up in the annals of the justice system for a very long time. And we'll be looking into that once again. Gilbert Mitula Omware will join us today. He's a pro bono lawyer and we'll be talking about the penalty for petty offences, how the system is oppressing the youth. That conversation takes place at 9, and already we can see that you guys are joining us online this morning. Join us in those conversations as we go through Kenya's biggest conversation this morning, and we're looking at a lot of those issues. We're going to take a look at the weather right now and see what's happening in these skies around the country and across the world, and we'll come back and say hello to you. Are you there? I hope you are. Ednah's switched on that thing and the live streams are up. Let us know and say hello to us, and we'll say hello back to you as we get into it this morning.
This is the Situation Room, the only way to start your day.
If a lion shows you its teeth, it doesn't mean it likes you.
it doesn't mean it likes you. It wants tax.
A liar calls as witness one who is either dead or far away. Say it in Kiswahili.
Benlow nin inte nin der ayu markati kadikta. You know this character called liar. He has disturbed people. So when you tell him who are your witnesses, he will take you to a place where it is difficult to verify.
For someone like me who sweats a lot, I cannot survive there. Sweating is biblical. Good. And he must blame it on Adam, not me. Because Adam messed up and he was told, "Now you fellow, you, by the sweat of your brow, thou shalt eat."
14 degrees and mostly cloudy in Nairobi, highs of 24 today, coming down to lows of 14, and it's 12 degrees and clear in Nakuru, highs of 26 and lows of 12. It's 15 and mostly cloudy in Nyeri, highs of 23 and lows of 14, and it's 10 degrees clear in Eldoret, highs of 25. 23 and mostly cloudy in Mombasa, highs of 29 and lows of 23, and we'll see lows of 24 in a cloudy Malindi, going to highs of 29. It's 19 and clear in Kisumu, highs of 31, and we'll see lows of 18 today. Looking into Kakamega, partly cloudy at 16, highs of 29 and lows of 15. Kampala is mostly cloudy at 19, highs of 28, and we'll see highs of 29 in a partly cloudy Dar es Salaam at 24. It's 14 and cloudy in Johannesburg, highs of 24 and lows of 8 today, and cloudy conditions in Lagos at 24, highs of 29. 22 and mostly cloudy in Kinshasa, highs of 31 and lows of 22, and at 31 Beijing is sunny Tuesday afternoon, highs of 34 and lows of 25. It's cloudy at 19 in Paris, going to highs of 25, and we'll see highs of 23 in a mostly cloudy London at 15. Mostly cloudy New York Monday night at 25. Coming into Tuesday, we'll see highs of 30 and lows of 22.
Spice up your life. Mature, intelligent talk every morning. Spice up yourself. Mornings
Good morning,
done right.
everybody. And we see a quite
94.4
on this morning and saying already here we are. We see you. Okay. Ednah. Desmond Otis says, good morning, Ndu and CT. How is the weather weathering you guys? CT, how is the weather weathering you?
It's cold.
Okay. Okay, there we go. Sugar and Spice, everything nice. Good morning, Ndu and Mwalimu CT. That's the 2000 Joe, Alex. I'm calling you all of those names today. Peter from Kericho says, welcome back, Muga. Tuned in from Queen Creek, Arizona. And Sam Wambogo says, morning, CT and Ndu. Yesterday, you got me thinking about Niger and their proverbs. Yes, I believe another one is coming from Niger today. Dismas Ombuya says, good morning, good people. Looking forward to a great show. Karibu Sana. Isaac Babji, good morning, Ndu and CT. How far now? Oh, ma, we did, Jari. We did do this thing as we did do. Ricardo Mariera says, Kitengela Iko locked. Yes, hello, Spice team. Love from Vegas, the city of sin. Yeah? Okay. Peter says, Kaveve Kazoze. That's the one Ednah woke up on this morning. We see you where you are. All right. Good morning, Ndu CT. How far? Okay, yes, we see that. Dedan Wangi says, good morning, CT and Ndu. More love from Bells Kukan in Somalia. Good morning to you too. Don Sabwa says, good morning to you. In Malawi, we say Zikomo. CT, how do you answer back? Ndu Zikomo. Zikomo to you, Don. Do you know how we answer back in Malawi, CT? If I say Zikomo, you say Zikomo. Zikomo.
Zikomo.
Bas. Abi?
Meaning?
I don't know. I'm just going to assume that it is a greeting and we are all okay. We have not insulted each other.
Okay.
So,
why don't we insult each other once in a while, just for the heck of it?
Why not? Bonnie Lake is where Joe Mungai is and says, good morning. Hi, Ndu, Ednah, and CT. Kindly send a word of encouragement to my sister, Veronica Wanjiko, who's battling cancer, and her kids, Joe, Beth, and Monica. Indeed, prayers up, sister. Word of encouragement to you for sure, and we're together in this. Not an easy thing, but definitely prayers up. All right. Lots of people. Again, let's see if we can get this thing down to say hello to more people today. Nyangwechi says, good morning. A very fantastic morning, guys. I'm delighted to be with you again. I'm always expecting an informative show, as it should be. Asante Sana. Aikiki Samuel says, good morning. Good morning, Spice FM. Listening in from Iraq. That's Boniface Joroge. Robert Mbogo, good morning. We see you, the dawn. Good morning. It seems like you need to say the dawn with some, establishment. Tuned in from Mombasa. Dr. Michelle Amondi Harrell says, good morning from DC, locked in. Yes. Francis Kabina says, good morning all the way from Biharamulo, Tanzania. Good morning to you. Ruth Mugo says, God bless you for your work. Thank you, sister. God bless you too. Hello, CT and Ndu, watching live from Chengdu in China. I saw Chengdu. I was like, No, it's Chengdu in China this morning. It's always so good to have you guys. Just a word, we never take it for granted. And thanks for joining us every morning, waking up early and starting this conversation with us. It will definitely be worth your while. All right, as we get into it this morning, Niger is where the proverb's coming from this week, n'est-ce pas?
Yes, it is.
Take it away.
I did mention that it has the world's largest deposit of uranium.
You did.
Did I not?
You did.
Well, let me just mention also, it also happens in one of the world's poorest countries. When I say poor, I mean dirt poor. So that uranium doesn't seem to help them very much, does it?
No.
And yet, that uranium is mined.
Not by them, though.
Doesn't matter, it's the uranium. Every time we look at the West and we blame them, and we should blame them, we forget that if it isn't for the leadership, because it isn't one person, if it isn't for the leadership that we Africans seemed to acquire for ourselves, the West wouldn't have the foothold they do.
That's very true.
We have people who seem to negotiate our very livelihood from our very grasp. It's like we elect them so that they can negotiate the worst possible deals for us. Anyway.
I could talk about this for hours.
Yes, that is why I've held myself, because I had a sudden feeling like I was on a spiral.
Okay.
You cannot shave a man's head in his absence. He has to be there.
I can see how that would be a tad difficult.
When you have a man's head, he has to be there.
You have to be present to get things done.
That's really it.
Yeah? You have to be present to get things done. You cannot shave a man's head in his absence.
No, not possible. Ce n'est pas possible.
Ah, très bien, monsieur. Ta français, très bien. Okay. Let's take a look at the headlines. What is going on today on the front page of the Standard? Devolution, moment of truth. National and county leadership converge in Eldoret to take stock of 10 years of devolved government. The country has seen successes, failures, opportunities, and big lessons. It has also improved infrastructure, healthcare, but with a fair share of white elephant projects. Devolution is covered on page 2, 3, 4, and 5 of the Standard. And we'll look at the hits and misses. On the front page there, the Council of Governors chair, in the person of Anne Waiguru, the governor of Kirinyaga County. Good progress is one of the hits. Effort recorded on county level infrastructure. Circulation of money, resources are at the grassroots. Participation of people in governance and development. Another hit is the considerable progress in managing devolved health function. The misses, low revenue collection, missed targets and stalled projects, poor disbursement of funds from the national government, widespread corruption and mismanagement of funds, disproportionate share of functions against devolved resources. So that's some of the story. We'll be looking at that in a bit. The Standard also tells us today that WorldCoin may have collected data for a year, the court has been told. So you people saw some August 4th and 5th movement. People were coming from everywhere collecting 7,000 shillings. They had been there for a while, is what the court is being told. The Data Protection Commissioner, Immaculate Kaisit, has moved to court seeking to bar WorldCoin from either transferring or processing data that has been collected from Kenyans. We will look at that as well. The Bomas team agrees to anchor talks in law, so whatever they speak of over the next however long it will take them to speak, this now will become law for the nation. Yeah? The question is also one of the national pages, Will the new funding model actually save varsities? And we'll look at the solutions for that. Speaking of education, the front page of The Nation says Machogu is talking of 26,000 teachers awaiting transfers to their home counties. Teachers prefer to work from home, literally. MPs to pass motion on Ruto-Raila crisis talks. The technical teams have decided to frame agenda as dialogue, and they're set to resume on Monday. Resuming on Monday, have they done anything? Okay, we'll check. Have they talked? Saw empty rooms and people waiting, looking pinched. Global lenders have pushed for layoffs. There's a job scandal. 2 tribes got nearly 60% of KRA slots. It's being called a scandal. The public wage bill crossed the 1 trillion shilling mark last June, eating into nearly half of the national revenue, and the crisis will worsen due to bad hiring habits and open theft. Yesterday was the 14th of August. We were going to see a change in fuel prices. We did not see those prices go up, neither did we see them go down. Why? The government has applied a subsidy, and the state is exploring the fuel subsidy to check rising pump prices. Okay, we'll look at that story as well. All right, on the back page of The Nation, it's looking at that education story and what CS Machogu has said in terms of 26,000 teachers who are yet to go back to their home counties and are waiting for that transfer. CT, over to you, Roger.
Roger. We are looking at the Star, top right-hand corner in teal green. Devolution event, timely release of funds, tops governor's wish list in conference. Now this one I'm going to talk about at some length. Exposed fake papers rampant in civil service. In fact, there's some surveys that say the number of people who are employed in the civil service, 30% of them have fake papers.
Wow.
And it ranges from KCP papers to KCSE to diploma to university, meaning the papers you present do not represent you.
Okay. I know you've not read the story yet, and we'll go into the story, but how do they know they're fake?
We have the Qualifications Authority. They determine. It's not hard. You take the papers. Kenya National Examination Council has. You say you went to this school, they call the school.
Then they find out that it's not real.
First of all,
but they still allow you to continue working there. There's no problem.
No, people get sacked. We even have people who've been jailed.
Okay.
Though the numbers are few. What often happens is that, you see, there's a number that is assigned to you every time you sit for an exam in this country. Now, it's like our number plates.
Yes.
Our number plates in this country have appeared to be not duplicated. You find...
in triplicate?
Yes, exactly. Now, same thing. The name of an individual may not appear because all you've done is provided a number that was allocated. When they go to check, it's a different name, and they're wondering, but excuse me, this is not really you, is it?
Yeah, it's somebody else.
Yeah. And they'll do list people who highly profile people who have been named in this saga that seems to have enveloped the country when it comes to fake papers.
Okay?
Yep. Qualification Authority announced, by the way, just so that you understand, 250,000 public servants had forged academic certificates. Just so that you understand.
Okay, just a small number.
Just so that you have clarity.
Sawa.
Record harvest expected following fertilizer subsidy. Okay. Why the media leaders may remain without security. Okay. Shakahola suspects can't account for wives, children. Right, that is...
their own?
Yep.
Okay.
Yep.
So...
it's their own. Then if we look at the Business Daily, we are looking at... they also have a top right-hand corner.
They do?
They do. And here's a story in a section called Life, okay? Theirs isn't in teal green. It's a picture of what was once a leafy suburb called Nyeri in Mombasa. And they're saying the rich move from Nyeri as flats come up. The laws at some point did not allow one to put up a building beyond a certain height. That law seemed to have done a thing and gone wherever it is that such laws go to. And now one can. So you have high rises in Nyeri. So they're saying people are moving out. Some moving to Kilifi. As in Boffa in Kilifi, some moving to Vipingo. Because they feel one moment you have this house with a compound, then your neighbor is a 10-story building.
Looking down into your compound.
And some even throwing things into your compound. I know because I experience it myself. I have neighbors. You wake up in the morning and you're finding cans of beer.
In your compound?
In your compound.
Your compound essentially is a big trash bin.
Yes.
Yeah.
So they probably don't mean to. They just probably have a drink and just toss it off the veranda. Because if there are 5 or 6 stories next to your wall, then they may not... See, they don't know you exist. It's just the other thing.
Neither do they even regard it.
No, it's not really of consequence. Yeah. But you can imagine your shock and horror when you find cans of beer and you're thinking, where did this come from?
Did I have a party?
Yes. Then having a chat with the neighbor tells you, oh, you don't have a problem. Let me show you what I've collected from my garden over the weekend. So, new taxes push cars beyond the reach of most Kenyans. That's the headline. Actual car taxes jumped 14.6% on average.
Sheesh.
Hey, these things are expensive.
Everything just keeps going.
Yes, UK firm eyes sale of Kenyan tea estate in sexual abuse scandal.
At what? Come again, please.
There's a company that had, among the problems it was dealing with, were accusations that workers had been sexually harassed.
Right.
Okay? So there's a question of this particular company now being sold. Okay?
Okay.
Yes, I'll give you details of who's trying to buy it. Okay?
Okay.
Ruto reinstates fuel subsidies in U-turn.
Yes.
All right? That's what we hear. I wouldn't celebrate yet.
Not yet. Everything seems to be jumping up and turning around. Let's take a look at traffic and then we'll come back and look at some of these stories in detail. It's Kenya's biggest conversation. Good morning.
Thank you very much, Eric, and it's good to be at the Situation Room.
Always a pleasure coming here. This is the most challenging interview panel in Kenya. You guys are very well informed, and as you can see, Charles today, very philosophical.
To be poor in this country is the greatest sin you can commit, not just from a legal perspective, but from life generally. It is very, very skewed.
We've just heard on the floor of Parliament, just most recently, a leader within the ODM saying that Sisi ni ng'ombe is a baba.
Yeah.
Which means that you're willing to be milked dry.
You cannot force me to believe. I'll give way. If it's land that I'm told to return to you, I will. Okay? Because the court has said so. But I'll continue saying, hawa watu wamenirusha. That's all that I'm doing.
The Situation Room, Kenya's biggest conversation.
Okay, it doesn't look too bad this morning. We're just looking at a little bit of traffic starting to build. This is Wayaki Way. Yeah, that's Wayaki Way going towards the CBD. A little bit of movement on Jogo Road as well. We're probably not for the next week or so going to see much in terms of traffic. I don't know what happened. School shut down. Traffic also kind of shuts down. It's not too bad. Coming off of Cabanas, right there, North Airport Road, heading towards the Eastern Bypass and then stopping at that Outer Ring Junction. Well, we see some movement here and there, but again, it's all manageable. And coming off Thika Superhighway, that Pangani underpass doesn't have too much happening there either. Kiambu Road also looks pretty good. Coming off Gong Road, no movement as such as yet. It's an all wait and see kind of thing. So let's wait and see what happens in a short while. Talk to us, folks. Spice FM KE on Twitter. Want to keep things moving this Tuesday morning and see how it all pans out closer to traffic hour.
Spice up your life. Mature, intelligent talk every morning. Spice up yourself.
Okay, it's 25 minutes to top of the hour, and we're looking at stories making headlines today. Let's look at this job scandal story. Kind of something that seems to always be the monkey on the shoulder, isn't it? let's look at 1, 2, 3, 4. Number 1, audit reports reveal how state agencies routinely violate the law by employing more staff than required, adding to the wage bill burden. I'm confused. It says a certain number of jobs you hire more than you need. I don't know where that comes from, but okay, let's go. Looting of public funds through salaries for ghost workers is reaching crisis levels, as the latest Anti-Corruption Commission report shows. Number 3, MPs are furious, angry, yani beyond angry. Now they are furious.
What are furious about?
That Kenya Revenue Authority has hired 788 out of 1,406 revenue service assistants from only 2 communities. So they're furious. Now, after furious becomes rage. After rage now.
So what's the complaint? That their people were not employed?
No, they are annoyed because you've hired half of the people that you wanted to hire from only 2 communities.
Yes, which means other communities are not equally represented.
All the rest of the communities are represented in the other half, and that's unfair.
Really?
Yes, and now they're angry. No, they're furious. Okay. Counties, this is number 4 now. Counties without set staff ceilings are on a hiring spree, which has seen devolved units spending up to 50% of their revenue on salaries. Now, this is a problem, isn't it?
Why is it a problem?
You are supposed to use money for development, but you're seeing that 50% of the money that you're using is actually going towards recurrent expenditure, such as salaries. Is it really? Okay, development of individuals who work for you.
When people earn a salary, they're developing. They're able to pay fees. They're able to do all manner of things. They're able to, etc., etc., etc. But clearly, you disagree with me.
I clearly do disagree with you.
Please
Other
continue.
things should be done now. Because first, what is it telling us? They're hiring more people than they need. You're hiring more people than you need.
No, maybe they need those people.
No, you said that these are the people. You've written it down. Or were you half asleep when you wrote it down? So, taxpayers paying over bloated public service. This is the thing now. Now, let's look at the public service, not even at the devolved unit. When the PSC reviewed staffing levels at the government in 2021, it determined that 466 staff were enough to serve some 45 cadres at the National Treasury. Okay? But when the auditors last year analysed employee data at the Treasury, they found it employed 1,061 staff for the same positions, overshooting the required number by 595. That is some 138%. Do you follow me so far?
I follow you.
Okay. Now, review of the National Treasury staff establishment revealed that 39 positions were authorised, established. They had 92 of staff in post. Similarly, 45 positions of staff with authorized, similarly, 45 positions with an authorized establishment of 466 members of staff had 1,061 staff members in post, exceeding the approved establishment by 595 staff members. This is according to who? Our lovely lady, the Auditor General, Nancy Kadongo. She says that this is all looking rather interesting in her 2021-2022 financial report. Another report shows that during the same year, the State Department for Public Works employed 74 staff who were not required in some 13 cadres, having 101 employees where only 27 were needed. During the year, the State Department spent 807 million shillings as compensation to employees, out of which 559.8 million were basic salaries to permanent employees and 236.6 million were allowances. Okay? Now, a series of reports on different public agencies have lifted the lid on rampant breach of the law by employing more staff than required, spending billions of shillings on people who have been given jobs but have no work to do.
Really?
It's like magic. It's great. The auditors warn that public agencies could be hiring just for the sake of it and without seeking a concurrence from the PSC. The Auditor General notes that some agencies have been bypassing the PSC while hiring new staff, especially the checks and balances that would prevent excessive hiring.
Okay.
So,
is that the end of that story?
No, but I'm going to stop there. You know why? Because it's clear that one thing is happening, according to what Nancy Kadongo is pointing out here. It has already been pre-established how many jobs you require to be filled. It is written down, it is documented, it is assented to, it is approved. So logic then begs that as you are hiring, if you need 466, you would hire how many? 466. Now, in another stratosphere is where now you say, actually, we need 466, but how about we go and hire 1,061? Now, these 595 people, no portfolio, no job description, they are just kind of hanging around there. Or where do they go? Do they have a desk? Are they in the field? Are they just hovering on somebody's shoulder in a closet somewhere? Where are they? What are they doing? We don't know. But one thing we do know is that they're being paid.
Yes.
And so now when you talk about a bloated workforce, when you talk about cutting costs, these are the things that we're talking about. Why would you hire people who are not needed? Why would you hire people for which you have not sought approval?
So
What are they
the
doing?
law, have they?
They've broken the law, because even hiring in the public service, you must get approval from the PSC. This has not happened in many occasions.
And these people are being paid a salary.
Yes, they are, please. And allowances.
And we're saying that they have not, they have actually abrogated the law in doing what they're doing.
Yes, please.
So these people have abrogated the law. What has happened to them exactly?
They're still working inside
So
there.
let them continue working. These people are employed, are they Kenyans?
Yes, sir. Public service.
That's fine.
Yeah. It's okay.
Look, if what they have done runs afoul of the law, I expect that story to have told us what it is that has been done. But if it is the story that we keep hearing year in, year out, okay, let it rip, man. Why are you making it 50-50? Make it 70. This thing of 70% of the money being used for development and 30% for employment, forget it, flip it. Take 70%, employ people.
Let them just be standing around.
Let them be standing around and receiving money, and let all the progress that they want, tell them it's in your salary. Go and make that development in your house, okay? You go and do what you need to do with that money. See, you want a job and you want development. We're giving you the development.
Okay.
You have it with you. You go and actualize it.
In fact, you are development.
Yeah, you are it. We are developing you. So now you go and sort yourself out. You want a road. The number of you who've been employed and have a salary, find out how you're going to fix that road. I mean, what I'm trying to say is, so long as we keep talking about the law being abrogated and people doing what they shouldn't do, and yet nothing happens to them, I am not interested in that story, because it's the same story with the county government. Okay? You hear horror stories of how governors who are on their last round of employment, and just before they leave, they give 5-year contracts to some senior. So you, the new governor, you're stuck with these people.
Yes.
Okay? It's a horror story upon a horror story. And since the people who ought to be pitching a fit about it don't, the Auditor General points it out. People who are supposed to tell us, this is what happened, blah, 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 this is what we need to look at, silent on the matter.
It's very interesting, because you asked the question in a specific way a few minutes ago when we talk about, because as of this report, we've also seen now that's where this hullabaloo from members of parliament, they are not really satisfied with the fact that, okay, out of the 1,400 people that you were supposed to employ, 800 of them have only come from 2 communities. That's the one you can make noise about. In the last few weeks, we have seen report after report after report come from the Auditor General.
Yes, we have.
KPLC here, education here, talking about who did what and what was not supposed to happen. The people who are supposed to then ask questions and refer these matters then for onward investigation and possible prosecutorial activity is who? Is members of parliament.
Yep.
The same members of parliament who are telling you, actually, you know what we're furious about? We are furious that these jobs were only given to 2 communities.
Okay, fine. Then?
The thing that you should actually be doing, asking the questions about, okay, guys, billions, not millions, billions of shillings year in, year out are being spent on individuals who were, number one, are not needed in that job, for who the law was broken to employ them, and who continue getting money compensation for nothing. Those are the questions that should be asked, because the Auditor General does not have the power to now say we're moving this thing onto investigation.
No, the Auditor General has done
she's
done her job, and she's told you these are the issues, and there are agencies that are supposed to, there are bodies within our government or governance structure who have the mandate and the power to deal with these things. Now, being angry isn't dealing with it.
No, it isn't. It isn't really.
Okay, it isn't. It's you trying to show the public that you are upset with it. Why are you upset? Why exactly are you upset that two communities are hogging the bulk of the position? That's why you're upset. Then why don't we do an audit of every government agency that we have, every parastatal, and figure out how really is the configuration of employment? And you will find that that skewed manner in which people are employed exists. You will find some parastatals where there's one community that dominates, or two communities. This is the story of our lives. Okay? So this pretends that it's a bad thing. It is not a bad thing. It's only bad when your people are not included.
Yeah, because if your people were included, it would be the grandest thing on
Yes. The people who, and you correctly put it, have the power to actually change this thing so that this representation is considered to be equitable are the ones who do nothing about it. And they're the ones who you will find promote this because they'll pitch a fit in parliament. But when they have an opportunity, they're not saying, "Bana, you know, nina watu wangu bana." Just three, please, just three. So, forget this charade. If you want to employ people, employ them.
Even more than you need.
You employ. Just let people know that when we spend money in employing you, we can't build roads, we can't bring water, we can't do all these things.
Yeah.
So choose.
So you choose. You want roads or you want your people to be employed? Because we can do both.
Yes, we can do. Yeah. So I mean, just decide.
Or rather, we can do one or the other. We cannot do both well.
Yes. So choose what you want us to do for you. But this pretense of, well, it's a bad thing. Bad how? People are being employed. They have money. They can do their stuff. Just get off this nonsense and hypocritical song and dance and look up and say, look, folks, our people need employment. But how do we go about this?
Right.
How do we balance this? How do we ensure that we actually achieve the things that we want to achieve? And what honest conversation can we have with our people? They were angry.
Yeah, furious. They were furious. Okay. Breathe and tell us another story. Okay, well done.
Exposed fake papers rampant in civil service. I told you 250,000 public servants, according to the Qualifications Authority, in 2021, had forged academic papers. Now, in this list of people who have been named as possibly having fake papers meaning the papers you say are yours are not yours. Okay?
They're somebody else's, or you manufactured your own paper?
You've gone and manufactured your own, and how we know is because all these things have a serial number. You are told, hii ni namba yako ya mitihani, this is your examination number. When those numbers are checked against the master roll that exists within the Kenya National Examination Council, or the universities, or the secondary schools, they are found that those things don't exist. Yes, among them, there's a Kapsaret MP, Oscar Sudi, okay? Now, his matter is still in court. There was former Mombasa Governor Hassan Joho. His was an issue about Kampala University. But Kampala University defended that the degree was genuinely awarded to him.
Okay.
So that story went that way. Then there was Nairobi Governor Johnson Sakaja. This old matter also went to court. And they said, guys, stop wasting our time.
Leave us alone.
Leave Sakaja alone. Then there was former Taita Taveta Governor Granton Samboja. Ethics and Anti-Corruption had taken this matter to court. They were told, it's not your business, go away. Go away and go very far away.
Leave us alone.
Not your business. So that ended there. But by the time you have 250,000 people in the civil service with forged papers, there's one particular on which this one I liked. It's a story of somebody who was employed by the Kenya Ports Authority. Okay? According to this person, according to the report and the article that has been written by certain Julius Otieno in the Star, the forged certificates were Kenya Certificate of Education, Kenya Advanced Certificate of Education, a higher diploma in forensic psychology and criminology from Kenya Institute of Studies in Criminal Justice, and a certificate from Kenya Methodist University. Okay? Now, when they looked, this thing took 16 years in court.
To do what?
To determine this case.
Okay.
Okay, it started in 1995. In the end, they said, no, actually, these papers of yours are forged. The guy had been working in KP all that time. But remember, the High Court jailed former Kiam Mwagi MCA ward Robert Kibe Gidongo for 4 years and a fine of 500,000 with forgery of academic papers. Okay? The question that I ask is, why do people feel the need to forge papers?
Where is that pressure from? Because usually, look, CC, usually somebody behaves in a manner like that it would appear that there is, obviously it's a requirement, and you have the job in front of you, isn't it?
Yes.
But what they require is for you to have these papers, and there's not enough time, because if you were to then start going, you would lose the job. So it's pressure to then go forge a document. And it also seems to be that this particular market is thriving, because you can get these forged documents somewhere, can't you? Isn't it?
Yes.
Somebody somewhere is making them, creating them, designing them, or however they do them. But why the pressure? Why do you feel the need to forge it, as opposed to either one going to said institution to get the academic qualifications?
You've actually gotten the heart of the matter, because forgery, it means you want to gain a position by false pretenses. You want to exist or live in a make-believe world. It's rampant, clearly, from this report and from the article that we're reading. So, if somebody can forge papers to be employed, what do you think they're going to do when they're in a position of employment?
Good Lord in heaven.
Because it bespeaks of the mindset that these individuals have.
Yep.
Now, these are the ones who are employed. What about the ones who are seeking employment, haven't yet been employed, so they can't be sort of like found out? How many are there?
So are we surprised? Think about it like this. Let's graduate this conversation a little bit, right? Are we then surprised when you see reports from the Auditor General, Nancy Gathungo, or whoever, Edward Okoh before her, that you talk about corruption, things have not quite matched what they're supposed to match. You see things in excess and you can't really explain it. It doesn't make sense. Are you surprised?
No.
Because these are some of the same individuals who come in on a forged document, who are then running these processes. I mean, the person who came up with the slogan "garbage in, garbage out," what do you expect? If you have somebody who started from the very beginning on a position of forgery, right?
Yes.
Because that's what it is.
Yes.
It's false. It's not true that you were ready to do something in order to achieve another result that was not true. It is a misrepresentation.
Remember
what is going to stop you while on the job, right? Especially if your job means that you're going to handle certain processes whereby money can pass hands. What will stop you?
Even if your job doesn't involve the handling of money, you'll position yourself so that you are handling it.
So are we surprised that things happen?
No, I'm not. Remember, the question that we've asked before in the studio is, do you know what you set in motion? When you set a certain example from a position of authority, do you know the consequences of what you've set in motion and where they will end? When you've had decades of people who are in authority and people who are in elected positions and therefore are in authority, prefer to live and set examples of the worst possible kind, disregarding the law,
the truth,
pilfering from public coffers, encouraging and essentially making certain that impunity is the order of the day. So what do you think happens? You dismantle the legal processes, you dismantle the very ethos of what is right, and this is what you get. So people come along and figure, I don't really have to work hard. I don't really have to study.
No, but you think about it, City. Human mind, your brain says, look at what somebody else has been able to do, and they've not actually had to put any thought into it. And then you say, then me, I'm also in the position.
And I'm stressing myself.
Why should I stress myself to do this as well? We don't see the consequences. We don't see the effect that it has on those who come later. It's interesting because Ahmed has asked a very interesting question here. He said, wait a minute, 16 years in court to defend yourself over a forged PhD document. It doesn't take 16 years to finish a PhD, my friend. You would have been able to get the PhD. Actually, you would have gotten the PhD and then moved on after that.
No, it wasn't even PhD. It was just first degree.
Oh, Lord in heaven. But you would have done 4.
Yes, but the forgery wasn't with the degree or diploma certificate. It started with primary school, secondary school, meaning this person went the full hog.
Hey, I'm not, you see, this is the thing for me. I'm not surprised when we see the things that we see. Because I keep saying, things don't happen. People make them happen. Theft doesn't just occur. People steal. Money doesn't disappear. People take it. It is people who make these things happen. So are you surprised about the wanton corruption that you see? People have gone to Wasingishu from yesterday to talk about devolution. And one of the things they're talking about here is that the widespread corruption and mismanagement of funds, it's not something. You don't walk into, let's pick a county. You don't walk into Kakamega County and greeting you is the, hello, I am corruption and mismanagement. No, it is people that make these things happen. So are we surprised that these things are going on as we see them? Devolution, the moment of truth, and they're talking about this in Eldoret this week, and they're trying to look at ways in which to improve certain things. Is the country on track 1 decade into devolution with the wanton corruption and mismanagement that we see, the hits and misses for the healthcare sector? Counties want to improve health facilities 10 years into the devolved system. So many things that they want to do. But are people going to allow these things happen? We can talk about policy. We can talk about structure. We can talk about expertise. We can talk about all of these things. But the people who are driving these processes, do they see the importance of them?
Do let me tell you the consequences. We imagine that we understand. That mindset follows us everywhere, not just in positions which have a high profile, but in everyday life. Someone is driving, you are a driver, you are in a tuk-tuk. You will be oblivious to what's going on the road. You will not follow traffic rules. Yesterday I lost a former colleague because some careless driver, lorry driver, he was in a tuk-tuk, ran over him and the tuk-tuk driver, the piki-piki, the boda-boda.
Oh.
Ran over him.
Oh, Bambi.
So much so that his body was split in two.
Oh, Bambi. Oh, no. Okay.
Now, you tell me, on a clear road, everyone is keeping to their side. How do you get to that? Where was this person even looking? Were his eyes even on the road?
No, he expects everybody to be looking at him.
His mind was elsewhere, probably even talk on the phone.
Indeed.
I will hear more about the case. What I'm saying is, if we were to take a small audit of what it is that happens to people as a result of this attitude change where everything goes and no more moral compass, no more moral leaning, you just do what you like, we will be shocked at the things that people are now doing and will continue to do. And this is not something that will stop. It'll get worse.
It will get worse. Let me give you a slight audit. It's, minimal audits of some of the projects across counties that are yet to be completed. Nairobi, stalled projects, 16.1 million shillings feeder roads in Githurai. Nyamira, 3.1 million Nyamalia Stadium, 50 million stalled fire station, 70 million stalled ward offices and sub-county headquarters in Kisii, 2 million Siabiai Market, and 84 million county office headquarters in Migori. 12 million Kigoto maize milling plant in Homa Bay, 42 million Paponditi Market and Kosawa dispensary of 37 million in Kisumu, 250 million county referral hospital in Vihiga, 257 million Bomet Stadium in Bomet, 1.9 Emotoroki dispensary in Kajiado, 20 million Chagai high altitude training camp and Trans Nzoia County teaching and referral hospital in Wasingishu, 5.5 million Propol dispensary and 29 million in the Kapkoris Makutano water supply project, and that's in Turkana, 469 million Cancer Center in Muranga, 49 Mavoko Stadium in Machakos. Get this, in Nakuru County, 1,781 projects valued at 4.9 billion shillings stalled. 499 million shilling stalled projects in Kitui, 503 million stalled projects in Garissa, 12 projects valued at 487.4 million shillings stalled in Baringo. These are the development that you're talking about. So, Siti, there's your question. Do you want us to develop you or do you want us to develop the county? The stalled projects, these projects were under the ambit of individuals who work at the county. This money, you'll find that some of it was paid, some of it was not paid. The people were supposed to finish the job. But here we are today and they are stalled. projects in the billions of shillings. We're having a conversation this week about devolution and where it takes us. For now, it's 7 o'clock.
Spice up your life.
Good morning, this is News. I'm Dennis Aseto. Fuel prices have remained unchanged in this month's review by the energy regulator EPRA. The Energy and Petroleum Regulatory Authority boss Daniel Kipto said the prices remain unchanged despite the average landed cost of imported fuel having increased in July by 64% for super petrol, 4.29% for diesel and 7.41% for kerosene. A litre of super petrol continues to retail at 194 shillings and 68 cents in Nairobi, diesel at 179 shillings and 67 cents, while kerosene will go for 169 shillings and 48 cents. The unchanged prices will remain in force until September 14th. Kipto said oil marketers will be compensated for the difference from the Petroleum Development Fund at the rate of 7 shillings and 33 cents per litre of super petrol, 3 shillings and 59 cents per litre of diesel and 5 shillings and 74 cents per litre of kerosene. This means the actual cost of fuel in Nairobi is 202 shillings and 1 cent for a litre of super petrol, 183 shillings and 26 cents for super petrol, and for diesel 175 shillings and 22 cents. Now, the last time government subsidized all fuel commodities was during the August-September 2022 fuel review. President William Ruto scrapped the subsidies immediately thereafter upon assuming office on September 13th. He recently ruled out the reintroduction of the subsidies, saying it is counterproductive. The fuel subsidy was introduced by former President Uhuru Kenyatta to cushion Kenyans from the high cost of living. The program was, however, sharply criticized, especially by the Ruto Brigade, amid claims it was riddled with graft. And the 8th Devolution Conference, scheduled to take place in Eldoret, North County, will be officially opened by President William Ruto tomorrow. More than 10,000 guests are expected to attend the conference, with some having already arrived in Eldoret. These as parents and students affected by the Finland and Canada scholarship scandal have threatened to go to the streets to demand that they be refunded their money by the county government.
Bwana B, kuja mbele yetu tuambie president amesema hivi na hivi. Lakini mambo ya vichorochoro hatutakubali na tutaendelea na maandamano. Watoto wetu wako nyumbani kwa sababu yako Mandako. Tumekuwa maskini zaidi ya vile tulikuwa kwa sababu ya wewe Mandako.
We are not calling off this peaceful demonstration.
To the whole country, including the president, the deputy, that if nothing is going to be done from now till tomorrow, checks to be handed to each and every parent here, because they paid it, they gave the check, they deposited, they gave the cash, whichever the means they used. There is no negotiations of any other form. No refund.
Meanwhile, President William Ruto has warned officers who are aiding criminals to acquire government documents such as passports and IDs. Speaking at the Eldoret State Lodge during a meeting with regional commissioners, Ruto said those engaging in corruption and other criminal activities are at risk of being prosecuted. The head of state said Kenyans want their taxes to be protected and used prudently, noting that it won't allow administration officers to engage in politics but serve all Kenyans equally. And a woman died and 3 others injured following a gas cylinder explosion in Nairobi. The middle-aged woman was hit by an object as she escaped from the scene of the explosion. 3 other people were rushed to the hospital with multiple injuries following the explosion. Doors were shattered, windows damaged, and household goods turned upside down, but the blast had several meters away. Public Service and Gender CS Aisha Juma has called on employees of the ministry to brace themselves for more work that will further development in her ministry. Speaking during the signing ceremony of the performance contract, Juma said that in order to achieve the government's agenda, there was need for them to cooperate and double their work effort.
The performance contract that we are signing, or we have just signed, with the principal secretaries and the respective chairpersons of our corporations under our ministry, will accord all of us the opportunity to implement performance targets that are aligned to the ministry's key priorities, the Kenya Kwanza administration plan, and indeed the government national development agenda.
Across the borders, and an airstrike killed at least 26 people in Ethiopia's embattled Amhara region as the region continues to be rocked by deadly clashes. The strike marked the deadliest attack reported since clashes between members of the Ethiopian army and a local militia known as Fano erupted in towns and cities across Amhara after months of tension. Prime Minister Abiy Ahmed's government imposed a 6-month state of emergency across Amhara on August 4th. This is News. I'm Dennis Aseto. Good morning.
Spice FM, Nakuru.
All right, a few minutes after 7 o'clock, and we're looking at traffic. Different parts of the city starting to build up. We'll see more movement on the Thika Superhighway coming out towards that Pangani underpass and then into the CBD. This is Murang'a Road, then getting through Ward Town as well. But again, nothing too sticky right about now. There's movements on Langata Road. There's also movement coming in from Haile Selassie as you come off Jogo Road, getting towards the Kamkunji roundabout. That's going to pack up quite some on Landis, and it's inbound traffic that's delivering a bumper-to-bumper situation. We're also looking at some movement on Lunga Lunga. Lusaka is also busy as you then come out towards the Nyeri Stadium roundabout, and also movement on North Airport Road. It's coming in from Cabanas and then out towards the Eastern Bypass. But again, nothing too worrisome, not for now at least. All right, what's coming out of Westland? A little bit of movement on James Gishiro, spilling over then towards Wayaki Way and then into the CBD the long way through Chiromo. Let's look when we get into traffic hour how much stickier that will be. But for now, all manageable, all good. Let's know what's going on where you are this morning and keep it moving. Spice FM, KE on Twitter.
This is the Situation Room, the home of hard-hitting political commentary and penetrating insights about the state of the nation. This is a talk radio experience like no other. The Situation Room, a place for hard truths, debates, and elevated conversations. The Situation Room, witty, political, engaging, deep, controversial. In the room, we have C.T. Muga, researcher, academic, seasoned political observer, a fountain of wisdom in these politically uncertain times. Ndu Okoh, Nigerian by birth, Kenyan by choice, communications expert, Pan-Africanist, a truth seeker and believer in people power, and Eric Latiff, agent provocateur, the man in the chair, seasoned journalist, news hound, a man who believes in punching up, not down. This is the Situation Room,
at 8 minutes
the
after
only
7
way to
o'clock.
start
Good
your
morning
day.
and welcome to the second hour of Kenya's biggest conversation. The Situation Room gets into its second hour now, and welcome to our audiences on KTN Home. And we're getting into a financial conversation now, and looking at how the government essentially will be advised to use or spend, or where it will all come from. And our guest for this hour is already seated in the hot seat. But before we get to that, let's tell you that DSTV is reminding us today that it's the holidays, guys. It's the holidays, and your children have a lot to do when it comes to entertainment, or a lot to get when it comes to entertainment. And the August holidays bring in the majority of Kenya's beloved learners, and DSTV has got you and your kids covered for that period. Great entertainment for kids on the African continent. Welcome to the wonder-filled world and get connected to over 15 dedicated channels exclusively for kids content. There's a new season of Miraculous and Cat Noir and Tales of Ladybug at 4:15 on Disney Channel 303. What do you need to do? Tune in and let your kids get access to this wonder-filled world. Dial *423# or download the My DSTV app and get a DSTV decoder with 1 month of family for 2,999 shillings. All right. As we get into this hour, Moses Banda is the... I look at this title and I'm very interested because We ask ourselves questions, okay, but I'm going to say it. Moses Banda is the Financial Services Advisor for the Presidential Secretariat, or rather the Presidential Economic Transformation Secretariat. Moses, good morning.
Good morning.
How are you?
I'm fine, thank you.
Good morning and karibu sana to Kenya's biggest conversation. You're in the hot seat.
I'm glad to be here. I've always listened to other people, but now it appears like I'm the one here now.
Yes, you are. And there are many questions this morning. Of course, we saw that the 14th of August rolled around and some of the things that we were told would not happen then happened. And so we're asking ourselves many questions, but we're going to get into that. Okay. But, you know, we want to welcome you and welcome you properly with some of the traditions, you know, that we have. And as we do that, CT is going to welcome you with today's proverb.
Yes. Proverbs for the whole of this week come from the country of Niger. Niger is the largest landlocked country on the continent. No, actually, in West Africa.
In West, I was going to say, huh? Yes. On the continent? No.
I was waiting for you to catch it, and you're slow. So, yes.
I was wondering which continent are we talking? Okay, so.
Okay, no. It is. They are the. In fact, just neighboring Niger, there are countries that are now in North Africa that are larger than Niger. But we had said in earlier in the morning that the thing that is outstanding about Niger is, if you look at it from a global perspective, they are the largest deposit of uranium, largest on the planet. But, now, this is the big but, they are also one of the poorest countries in the world. So you have to marvel and say, with such a huge uranium deposit, which is actually being mined and utilized, how then is it that they are still so poor? Anyway, the answer belongs to a different session, a different discussion. The proverb for the day: you cannot shave a man's head in his absence.
You cannot shave a man's head in his absence.
Wow.
Moses, your thoughts about
interesting. That? I mean, you have to be there for things to happen. I mean, you can't be a standby person. You must get into the thick of things. I see it like there are people who make things happen, and then there are those ones who watch them as they happen, and there are those ones that don't know what happened. So I think, to me, you can't shave a person who is not there. Means that you are missing in action. Yeah, I think so. You have to be there. You have to be part of the things that are happening. You have to make it happen. Don't be a standby. Yeah, that's the way I see it.
I love it. City hands out points, you know. I don't know how generous he's feeling this morning.
You know, the generosity when it comes to someone's opinion can never be adequate, because someone's opinion is just that, their opinion. It's the interpretation. It's how the proverb speaks to you.
Yes.
And on a scale of 1 to 10, you've got 10, because you've said exactly how you see it and how it resonates with you.
Interesting. Okay.
Well, there you go. Okay, so you have to be there to make things happen, and one of the things that happens around conversations of government and administration and the executive then is the economy. And this current administration came in on the back of a lot on the economy. The economy was front and center, and then now we see a position which you hold, Moses, as the Financial Services Advisor for the Presidential Economic Transformation Secretariat. Let's start with that secretariat before we get into the thick of things. What is the mandate of this secretariat, and upon its, establishment, what is it to do?
Okay, thank you. I mean, the Presidential Economic Transformation Secretariat mandate basically was to, or is to, track the President's key economic transformation pillars, track, advise, and support the entities that are supposed to realize these transformative pillars. Our work is not implementers. We advise. We therefore work with ministries, we work with counties, we work with state departments, we work with other stakeholders to achieve that. Right now, you know very well that the key pillars for the transformation of the economy as per the plan is centered around agriculture. It's centered around MSME and financing. It's also centered around housing and construction, health, digitization, and creative economy. So those are the areas that right now the Secretariat is focusing on in order to address this economic recovery challenge. Yeah.
So then, what's your job specifically in this?
From the financial inclusion point of view, you realize that financial inclusion basically means that accessing affordable and usable financial services and products to individuals and businesses in I would say in delivered in a responsible and sustainable manner. So it means that there must be some exclusion of some sort. So our job strives to remove those barriers that exclude people, individuals and businesses from accessing and participating in the financial sector by accessing the financial services in order to improve their lives. And that's where we come in. You realize that a country cannot grow at all if its people cannot access unlimited financial services. And this country, you know, we have quite a big chunk of our people over the years, especially the bottom of the pyramid, the ones in the informal space, the 10 million of them or so who have not participated effectively in the financial space. So that's what we strive to do.
Okay. For the longest time, there's a buzzword. You know, you suppose the job of government is to make the environment conducive in order for people to be able to do business and for its citizens to thrive, etc., etc. You know, we hear it all the time. So I'm hearing you say essentially that this secretariat and your position as advisor is the driver of making this environment more conducive, at least from a financial point of view, right? So when you talk about removing the barriers, then for people, then I hear immediately to get a major population, a major percentage of the population, if not as many as possible, number one, banked, and then access to financial services in the form of loans or access to capital and things like that. But then there are many things that need to happen in order for that to be. What would you see as some of the challenges why that cannot happen as quickly as it ought to, or is not happening?
I think from where I sit, I'll say that people will agitate if they have bad roads in this country. People will also agitate if they do not have good quality access, healthcare, education, and the like. But they will not agitate if they're not able to access finance. And therefore, the finance has been deemed to be this very difficult service that people should access. And you realize the players are basically private sector in this regard. And government's role, of course, is not to do business, but as you rightfully put it, is to create an environment that allows people to access this. But sometimes it becomes difficult. And that's why you find that when the president went round during his campaign, and he held economic forums with the citizen in the counties. One of the biggest challenge that kept on cropping up, especially from the people who operate small businesses, was the high cost of borrowing, and the bureaucracy and the difficulties that they go through, and the exploitation, especially with the players that are in that industry. And therefore, he picked upon himself and said, okay, we will see and try and see how we can create an environment where you can access. So government might not force the private sector to do certain things, but it can undertake what I'll call a demonstrative effect, like it did with this Hustler Fund, where it came in to demonstrate that, if you develop the right financial products, if they are tailored toward the needs of the biggest citizens in the country, then they can borrow. And that's why you see within a period of 6 months or so, we had almost over 18 million people borrowing about 33.3 billion shillings, because it was tailored to meet their needs. And this is usually one of the most difficult aspects of financial inclusion. The players are not able to develop financial products that suit the people. Now, this demonstrative effect is telling the public sector, in my view, that, listen, guys, there's demand here. There's business here, but this business needs to be. There has to be a financial disruption for you guys to come in, and we see that as a good demonstrative effect, because then why would somebody want to borrow at 19.7% per annum if they are able to access the finance at 8%, 7%? And as it continues to grow, I think the message is, you guys, you're not doing things the right way, And I think government should also be able to set standards. Let me say the word standards, in the sense that there has to be some order of some sort. There has to be standards that are complied, not just in financial matters, but in the economy, such that there's no. We should be able to ensure there's no exploitation. That when you come in when you are a hawker, for example, what's next after hawking? Where do you move next? Yeah. And what certain things must change for you to move from one state to another. So I see governments pushing this sector to ensure that there's I'll say top-down focus in financial inclusion matters. Finance should be a basic human rights thing, and not just something that's so difficult. People think finance is for other people, especially the ordinary people, and we have learned to live that way. That finance is difficult and it should be difficult to access. But we think that needs to be demystified.
Let's paint a picture of what's going on in the country, and then maybe you can tell us then what you advise, right? So we know that the majority of people today in Kenya are not able to access finance if they wanted to do their business. Okay, Hustler Fund comes in and maybe you can borrow 500 shillings and then you can do a little bit more after that. As you borrow, then you're eligible to get more as you go along. But your first borrowing is not going to save your business, as it were. That we know. Let's look at other sources of capital, other sources coming from banks. The base lending rate is through the roof as prescribed by the central bank. That then means that individual banks, when they lend you money, are going to do some crazy gymnastics and you're going to get huge interest rates, all right? So you're going to have to think twice about if you're going to get your capital from them. If you're going to go into some kind of business, we're looking at inputs for agriculture, very high. We're looking at other issues of power, very, very high as well. We're also looking at infrastructure, maybe a little bit wanting when it comes to then what we're supposed to do. So there's the picture, right?
Yeah.
Doesn't look very pretty, does it?
Doesn't.
what do you advise from your position that should be done? Because we've come from the established point that it is there to say this is what the people of Kenya then need in order for them to thrive. And the picture is not very pretty. What are you advising then now? This is what we need to do to save the people of Kenya from this slippery slope that we are going down.
I guess the financial space is such that it's been undertaken as a business from, in quotes, from people who want to make a kill and sustain their businesses. But I think we are saying that the top is saturated, because if you look at the structure of our beneficiaries, you have like 3 million people who are in formal employment. You have another 6 million people who are, I'll say, in blue collar job. You know, they have some form of licensing formality of some sort. And then you have this big chunk of the 10 million people that we call hawkers in this country, people who make from their business between 3 to 800 shillings per day. And we are saying that the people at the top, the 3 million, the 6 million, somehow are able to engage the financial formal support systems, if I might say that. These are the people who have some sort of collateral. These are some people who have some sort of credit history, some records, and therefore it's easy for the formal institutions to be able to underwrite their projects and therefore finance them. But the big chunk of the 10 million is the one that we are saying that the stakeholders need to look at the 10 million as business opportunity, a big business opportunity. But this is where the challenge is, that many of the formal financial entities or players are not able to design products and services for these 10 million people. And that's where we are saying that this is what we want to demonstrate, that these 10 million people, you guys have not been able to tailor good products for them. But if we demonstrate as government, if we are taking the lead and saying, listen, these people, if all of them are able to access, and majority of them access finance, then they will have more products and services produced, more goods, more manufacturing, and the top here, the 6 million and the 3 million will thrive. But they'll only thrive if the bottom here is thriving. And the government has started the journey. That's what I'll say, because the disruption of the affirmative action funds like Hustler, the personal, the group, the Women Enterprise Fund that we have also just re-engineered and also put it on the technology platform for it to reach more women, and the others in the pipeline that we are engineering would be a demonstrative effect that there's business there. Then the model of the government of the agricultural value chains, that this cooperative model at the ward, which is aggregating our farmers and aggregating our business people at the ward, that aggregation will be an infrastructure that circumvents the use of the traditional collateral requirements, because we'll be dealing with many members in one place. Their inputs, production cycle and the market taken care of to consumers, to market, and therefore I see private players coming into this aggregation and saying, I want to pick a value chain like dairy, for example. One says, I want to pick dairy as my product. Another one comes and says, I want to pick honey. Another one comes in the same aggregation and says, I want to pick poultry. Another one comes and says, I want to pick tea, I want to pick avocado. And through that, because of mitigation, through the use of the cooperative or the aggregation, then it mitigates risks, and therefore pricing comes down. There's assurance that the produce would end up to the market. The price is agreed upfront, and therefore deduction from source, just like it would happen in a salaried job for a person. When it comes to agriculture value chain, the same happens. So we are pushing the attraction of the private financial institution and telling them, hey, here there is a market, a big market that we have overlooked for a very long time. We are telling other players, listen, these risks are mitigated, and because they are mitigated, then you can review your pricing model, and that way, then more people will access financial services, and we think that's the beginning. Yeah.
Okay, CT has 65 questions, but let's take a break, and then we can come back and delve into this a little bit more and look at maybe if one of those things that you're talking about in terms of solutions are subsidies, which we've seen then make their way back in yesterday. It's 7:30 on the nose. It's Kenya's biggest conversation, and we're having a conversation with Moses Banda this morning, who is the Transformation Secretariat's financial advisor, and we're looking at, okay, so what are the options and what is government going to do when it comes to financial services and how it can be made easier for folks in the country. Do you have 800 shillings? Can you see 26th August on your calendar? We're all going to Nakuru for the Nakuru edition of this year's Choma na Ngoma. It'll be the 4th edition, and it's happening out of Nairobi for the first time. It was established in 2018. Choma na Ngoma is Standard Group's premier music concert under the Radio Maisha brand. It brings together music and food lovers for a night of fun and entertainment. Choma na Ngoma is all about food. It's all about music. It's all about partying. Last edition, we saw major African artists such as Pato Ranking, Yemi Alade, as well as major local artists such as Nyashinsky, Calligraph, Sanai Tande, and others. This year, they're making their reintroduction to the Choma na Ngoma stage. It's Calligraph, Otile Brown, Viri, Ben Sol, Nadia Mukami, Savuru, and Furthermore. Saru and Furthermore. Tickets are available on www.ticketsasa.com. You stand a chance to win a pair of tickets by sending the word Choma to 24338.
This is the Situation Room, the only way to start your day.
When you're impeached, you're impeached. When you're sentenced, you're sentenced.
Madam Chief Justice.
Until the sentence is set aside.
Ukibeba vitu kwa roho utakufa. If you carry things in your heart, you will die.
The reason for which you went to school and then gathered experience, that reason must be paid for.
All right.
Okay.
This level.
Shape up or ship out.
Levels don't change.
No.
It's
about shipping out. You're my business partner here.
Shipping out.
Are we talking about the ship in the bathtub? Or
the ship man?
One of Talam used to tell us a story of they were in school and they've been told to write composition about a ship. His classmate raises a hand. Teacher, are you talking about the ship or a ship goat?
The Situation Room, Kenya's biggest conversation.
13 and cloudy in Nairobi, highs of 25, and we'll see highs of 25 in a sunny Nakuru at 13. It's sunny at 14 in Nyeri, and 10 degrees and cloudy in Eldoret, highs of 25. Cloudy at 24 in Mombasa, highs of 29, and we'll see highs of 28 in a cloudy Malindi at 24. Looking at 19 in Kisumu, going to highs of 30, and 17 in Kakamega, going to highs of 29. Kampala is at 20 and partly cloudy, highs of 28, and we'll see highs of 29 29, and partly sunny Dar es Salaam at 25. It's 14 and partly cloudy in Johannesburg, highs of 24 and lows of 8, and very cloudy in Lagos, beckoning rain at 25, highs of 29. 31 will be the high and a mostly cloudy Kinshasa currently at 21, and that'll be the low for today.
Welcome to Spice FM, the best exclusive radio station bringing you the best mix of the best music ever.
"99 problems and traffic is not one of them this Tuesday. It looks like it's going to be able to flow through the city through and through. Coming into traffic hour right about now, and it looks all right coming off of Thika Superhighway as you get to Pangani. It'll just be a little bit of a wait as you go through that Pangani underpass, and we'll see some movement on Jogo Road. Landis is heavy though as you're going out towards Kamkunji, but they're going to come in from Langata Road with no problem whatsoever all the way through into the city, out towards Uhuru Highway, and then into the CBD, not a problem. And also now that we're looking at that North Airport Road going towards Cabanas, out towards the junction at Outer Ring, and then through to the Eastern Bypass, that looks good as well. And so it looks like Tuesday is going to come off just right. But we're going to keep an eye on things regardless. Let's know what's going on in your neck of the woods, and then let's talk on Spice FM KE on Twitter.
Mature, intelligent talk every morning. Spice up yourself. Mornings done right. 94.4 Spice FM, Nairobi.
Conversation continues this morning, and our conversation this morning revolves around finances, and we're asking the question, or rather having the conversation with Moses Banda, who's the Financial Services Advisor in the Presidential Economic Transformation Secretariat. CT question 1 of 65.
Interesting. I've listened to what you're saying. Makes perfect sense. And one can even see evidence of the very things that you're saying the government is doing. But to what end? When you look at all these plans, at what point will you know that your plans are successful? What will you see? Mm-hmm. What will you see among the Juakali associations, people who are in that so-called informal sector? What will you see among so-called young people who are starting up all these businesses? What do you expect to see? Now, in terms of, one, how will the businesses present themselves? That's one. Two, if you look at the larger picture, since you say that the vast majority of our people who are in business belong to this sector, how much more money do you see or do you envision will revolve in this sector? And how will that then play or relate directly to the larger picture of the economy of Kenya and to the collection that the government can realize from these businesses?
What I see as the end game in terms of demystifying financial access is the excluded, which is the majority, having options of accessing unlimited, and I'm using the word unlimited because what has been there for the last so many years is its finance has always been unlimited. I mean, you are not sure even if you apply for a facility, you will get it by the time you want it. The turnaround is just a big issue. We want to look at a situation where when we look at the M-Pesa outlets, the way there are many in this country, we have similar like outlets where people can just access funds when they want to do something, just because of one, the order and the policy framework and the civic education on financial matters. I'm using civic education as opposed to financial literacy because when you talk about civic education, people think it's about human rights issues, it's about liberty and whatever. But I think we also need a lot of civic education for our people to understand that the money matters, right from the school curriculum all the way to adulthood, so that we learn how to be producers of money as opposed just to consumers. We can invest, and therefore I'm saying that money should be accessible. It should be affordable, because we still believe that the cost of delivering financial services in this country is still high, and therefore the challenge is to the players in this industry to continue being more efficient, because by being efficient, then they're able to pass affordable to the beneficiaries, and that's why you find we ask ourselves, how do you underwrite a business like a person who roasts maize on the roadside? How do you appraise that particular business? Because these guys in this industry, formally, you are trained formally to appraise or underwrite businesses using financial records, balance sheets, issues to do with cash flow. But when you look at a guy who roasts maize on the roadside, who needs 2,000 shillings to buy 2 bags of maize, 1 sack of charcoal, and just sit out there, and then this person is not able to access 2,000 shillings in that economy because it's damn expensive.
Right.
They have lived in that life by borrowing from the money lenders. You borrow 2,000 shillings at 10% per day, which is 200 shillings. If you stay with that money of that lender for 1 year, then you'll be paying back almost 73,000 shillings for a loan that you took for 2,000 shillings. And that's how they have lived in that space for so long. The same happens to guys who I'm sure you've seen City and these guys who sell hawkers who sell sugarcane. They run along you on the road.
Right.
The same. They require 1,000 shillings. If you look at guys who roast maize on the roadside, there are over 50,000 of them in the country. You can imagine 2,000 shillings. 2,000 shillings multiplied by 50,000 people. How much is that? Almost 100 and something million. If you say those guys will borrow half a year, which is 26 weeks, this is another almost like 3-point-something billion. But the question is, this the majority, and there are many like those, is that they have been exploited for so long that when you come in and say, okay, instead of being charged 200 shillings per day, there's an option here that charges you less than a cent, per day, less than a cent. And we're saying that's what we want to see, people accessing that money that way, affordably, not handouts,
yes,
but affordably. Then the question is, how do you get that guy out of the roasting maize to something else? And this is where we are talking about, I'm talking about order now, government providing a template for order, where this person is told, you see, now you don't pay rent from where you operate. You don't incur any other cost. But if you are moving to the next level, then there has to be order. There has to be a place you'll sit that is space that is well marketed, well taken care of. Now you'll be expected to pay rent. There are certain obligations you must undertake. You will be expected to keep records. You understand? You'll be expected to pay tax. You see? You'll be expected and all that. So that we are saying that there must be desire to be something else from where you are. So in this space, you can access finance. You can move to the next level. You can participate in the money economy. You can pay tax. You can demand for services. Because you're not. We don't want somebody to be a hawker for the rest of their lives.
Indeed, and I'm saying this, even as we talk about the economic agenda, Moses. Can we really see finance operating in a silo? Because for me, it doesn't make sense that it does, based on the very thing that you're saying today.
Yeah.
Because for me, it's a little bit more than just the money. You can put money in the pocket of somebody today, but then there are things upon which this individual is going to spend that money. In order to develop themselves as an individual, and then the nuclear units around them, and then moving on to society. You've just talked about it now. The person who is roasting maize on the side of the road, you want them to graduate to another place whereby they have a more standard setting where they're selling that you want them to be banked, you want them to be formalized, you want them to start paying tax, etc., etc. But we also want them to be part of a greater ecosystem where other things are happening, where they take this money that they spend and they can apply it to a health system that works, that they can send their children to within an education system that functions properly, that their taxes, they can see that the roads upon which they have to ply every day to come and roast this maize is actually working and working properly.
True.
So for me, I don't see that finance can exist on its own when we're talking about an economic agenda that essentially is going to develop the country. How do we see these things actually before our eyes happening? I don't know that an individual who accesses the Hustler Fund today, for example, in the 6 months that it has been in existence properly, can say this is the marked difference that I have seen overall if these other things are not working together.
Agreed.
And I think that is the problem. If we don't see that these things are working in concert with other things, then we come back and we say, what is government doing?
Agreed. And rightfully so. And if you look at the recovery, the economic recovery model of the 5 pillars that I talked about, you realize that finance is just an enabler. Because we want to be food secure through agriculture. And we are saying, okay, these value chains that have been mapped in the entire counties. Every county, we know what is the flagship value chain. We know that once these individuals are aggregated into a cooperative, then we are saying the agricultural part of it should access finance because it's well structured, it's well organized, and there are markets. And that's where in agriculture you create the largest jobs. We are saying finance can kick in there, but when finance kicks in, many other things should happen in that aggregation of where you have so many people there. You have farmers, you have business people, you have all of them aggregated in one place. And we are saying through generation of their income through that structure, and they are assured of constant flow of cash from their value chains and the businesses that they operate at the ward level, then they are able to access good health care in terms of they can pay NHIF because they are receiving their uninterrupted income through their value chains throughout the year. They are able to save. The circle within the aggregation can be able to borrow from various financial players because there's a structure of some sort. I see it like a supermarket. If you walk into a supermarket, you walk in and you find shelves of different goods and products. That is detergent, that is water, that is beverages, that's fruits. All these products belong to one entity. That's the supermarket. They don't compete as such. But when it's season for going back to school, you walk on the side of the school and you get people have parked. The next time, so we are saying that whatever is put in that aggregation that we are calling a supermarket is products, from the farmers at the grassroots. Because the farmer who runs operates a cow and therefore generates money from dairy is the same farmer who runs who operates coffee, is the same farmer who operates an M-Pesa out there and a boda. So we're saying it's the same person. So they need to be put together in this supermarket and be able to benefit from all the value chains that they operate and other businesses. And then there will be what we call economies of scale to run down financial costs, and these people can be able to access, and therefore through that they can access good education, as you're talking about, good healthcare that you're talking about, a good mortgage they can access and pay because they have all these value chains. So it's a journey. And I in the beginning I said it has to be disruptive. It cannot be business as usual, because for the last 60 years we are where we are today. Our people are poor, there are no jobs, cost of living is high, our foreign exchange continue to decline, we cannot feed 50 million Kenyans. What about when they reach 100 million? So something has to break, something has to change. Model of that.
Mr. Banda, if you consider for a second,
yes,
you are a financial person, so I want you to explain to me this base rate. What does it do? What is it?
I know from the banking background, the base rate is like what you say that for you to break even, this is what you can't sell below. It's like a business where you buy sugar from wherever you are buying, and you are saying this sugar, this is the cost I've bought, I've incurred, and for me to be able not to make losses, I have to return what I have incurred. Okay. But then there's what you call the margin. Now, what do they call the risk margin? So that now you can say this is the base rate, but for me now to make profit, then this is what I need. This is my markup, and the markup is based on the cost you incur. Those ones who are very efficient, then their markup is not as high. But those ones who are inefficient, then they keep on passing that inefficiency to the borrower, and therefore that's why you see the differences of the risk points.
So when the central bank governor announces that they've raised the base rate, essentially this process that you're talking about suddenly becomes more expensive.
I mean, when they do that, the bank take advantage of that to not just the bank, the financial players, let's say, take advantage of that to readjust their base rates. But this is where we are saying that the efficiency of financial players should be able to be standardized in such a way that you are pushed to be more efficient. So that the end beneficiaries does not continue suffering the high cost, because you can't be inefficient so that you pass the cost to me. And that's what I was saying. I see a role of government here, where we are saying setting standards, where you're saying, sure, there's some basic and you engage, you don't dictate, but you engage the players and say, listen, there's a market here. We want to make it attractive for anyone who wants to come and engage in financial ecosystem, as we said, that there's 10 million demand here. And this is big, just like how the mobile telephony industry demystified that space, that they developed products of as low as 10 shillings, 1 shilling, and they went to the mass. We are saying in financial space, this has to happen, that we have to, and I can't blame the players, because come to think of it, City and Do, at the institution of higher learning, people are not trained how to go and take care of this big space that I'm talking about, the 10 million informal sector, whether it is finance for expanding businesses or even insurance. I expect if you go to Kibera, that's where you're likely to get in the slums people who require insurance more. And therefore, somebody should be able to design unique products for that group of people who are mikokoteni and people who push the cart and all that. But you find they are easier dealing with people who are employed, you and me, and things like that. And we need to go where it's difficult and get solutions.
But have we had a situation in this country where something like the base rate has been reduced instead of it being increased? And what is the effect when you reduce the base rate?
You remember during Kibaki's time, it was reduced. And what happened then, you remember the government deliberately avoided doing business, crowding the private sector. And therefore, I don't know whether you remember, the treasury bills went as low as 1%. And therefore, over time, they went down so that financial institutions now were forced. The shareholders insisted that, listen, you can't put our money in government paper. You need to push it out. And therefore, what that did was to transform the private sector, and there was more money availed in the space.
In the space.
Yeah.
Why aren't you doing it? Because if what you say is to make money more available to the large masses, and it has been done before, and we want to really reach these people, why are we not doing it now?
I guess all of you know where we are coming from. We are coming from an economy that has not performed. We have borrowed, and we find ourselves where we are. So what happens then is that when the government has no money, then you find that it has to keep on borrowing domestically or whatever, and crowding, and that's what we are trying to now to remove and disengage from, by saying, listen, this space that has so many people, 10 million plus, we need to approach it differently. Okay. We need to avail more in here. If I have a 500 million amount, I would rather spread it to many people and reach maybe 2,000 people than give it to one entity that gives me a building as collateral. You see, so that's what we are saying. How do we become innovative in developing what is required at this level? Even as you ask that, though, Moses, as being innovative, doing things differently is one of the things that President Ruto's government has said it will do regularly. Yes. You have talked about being innovative and doing things differently, disrupting the status quo. Yeah. But yesterday, which is always a very specific day in the calendar when it comes to certain things, is that we saw that the price of fuel remained unchanged, and for a specific thing, that there was the reintroduction of subsidies. One thing that we heard time and time again, that we cannot sustain this subsidy program for fuel in the country. So the government said, no more subsidies. We're going to shut that down. One of the things that would be disruptive, as you've said. But then yesterday, we saw the reintroduction of subsidies. So what, are there actually subsidies in place to stabilize the cost of fuel? Or what exactly is going on? If we're going to be innovative and disruptive, we're going back to spending money in order to make life a little bit more easier for Kenyans, isn't it? But then, which is it? Subsidize, not subsidize, be innovative, stick to the status quo. What really is the driver of this economic agenda, specifically when it comes to this? Let me say, subsidy is not bad per se. I think the issue of subsidy is where are you going to put it? Where are you going to place it? And if you are placing it where it's going to produce, just like the government has done in the fertilizer subsidy, where it's for production as opposed to consumption, that's a good way to go. I think that the challenge comes in when we want to borrow to consume. We want to subsidize to consume. Just there has to be a value. There must be a return on investment, and that's what I'm saying. That as we move along, I think the government is not afraid to keep on looking at what is working for its people at a given time. We are not in this tight jacket thing where we're saying this can't happen. I think as we move along, it's only fair and normal and prudent for somebody to keep on asking, saying where do I put what I want, so that many people can be able to do what to benefit, and we will see a lot of that before we stand on our own in terms of meeting all our development needs through local generation of revenue. That's what we desire to do, and the more we bring more people in that bracket where they can see value in paying taxes and the like, and they see value in service, the better, because then we'll be able to start being self-sufficient from what we collect and generate. Yeah,
this government has an advantage that previous governments didn't have, despite having a great number of people who are unemployed. These unemployed individuals are far more educated than we've ever had in the past. Yeah. So when we talk about disruption, the introduction of certain ways and means by which their livelihood can be improved, it's not just a receptive audience, but it's an audience that actually already has knowledge. It's an audience that can actually do more with that knowledge. Yes. If that opportunity is actually provided. Yes.
I agree with you, because you remember a city that every year we churn out 800,000 every year, 800,000 into the job market. But you realize out of the 800,000, the formal sector takes on only about 200 to 150,000.
Yes.
And then the formal takes 50,000. That's 200,000. So we have 600,000 that is left like that completely. But we are saying creating a job at the bottom is much cheaper than creating jobs at the top. So we have to, as you say, we have to look at all these things and say where we are able to create more jobs cheaply is where we need to focus on, so that we absorb all these people. And that's why we are saying this economic model of aggregation at the ward level is going to create opportunities for this number of people to be able to pick certain areas and focus on along the value chains.
Indeed. Time does go very quickly. Moses, thank you for being with us here this morning. Definitely conversations that need to continue. The economic agenda is front and center when it comes to seeing how Kenya will progress going into the future. Thanks for being our guest this morning, and hopefully we can have a chat with you again in the future. Moses Banda is the Financial Services Advisor, the Presidential Economic Transformation Secretariat. He's been our guest this hour, and as we go on to more conversations getting closer to the top of the hour, it's 8 o'clock.
Spice up your life.
I'm Dennis Aseto. UDA Secretary General Cleophas Malala says the bipartisan talks between the government and opposition won't end with a handshake. Speaking in Elgeyo Marakwet County, Malala said and also asked the government agencies not to interfere in the ongoing mediation talks at the Bomas of Kenya.
We are saying that we are not going to go outside the constitution. We are not going to suspend the constitution to start talking about elections of 2022. According to our understanding, the matter of election was dispensed with. They appealed at the Supreme Court. Supreme Court already pronounced itself on the matter, and that is water down the bridge.
At the same time, Malala has asked the leaders of Azimio to find a solution that will benefit the nation, stressing that the election is over and it is time to develop the nation.
So we want to call upon our brothers from the Azimio side. Let us focus on our future. Let us focus on building Kenya moving forward. Let us not look behind. We shall be like the proverbial wife in the Bible, Lot's wife in the Bible, who was told to look in front, and when she looked back, she froze into a pillar of salt. Let us look beyond 2022. Let us work together and let us move forward.
There's a decrease on the number of women working in top management at the Ministry of Transport. Speaking during the inaugural Women in Construction Forum, CS Kipchumba Murkomen said that the industry is male-dominated, yet the government recognizes the importance of diversity in the workplace and increased representation of women.
To make sure that in the next few years, God willing in this ministry, that I help us attain a situation where if we don't have the DG, at least the deputy DG who is a lady. In Kera, for example, Kenya Rural Roads Authority, out of 47 regional managers, engineers, there are only 2 women, one Makueni and another in Isiolo. I have told Kera board and the management that in the next 3 years, that number must go beyond 10 engineers. The same situation persists in Kenya, and we are going to make sure that we promote more women.
Nyeri County Woman Representative Jerusha Mamaji has added her weight behind the new university funding model, saying it will enable many students access tertiary education. At a meeting with journalists in Nyamira, Jerusha said President William Ruto's proposal to reduce funding for students from low-income families by 7% did not increase fees as the opposition leaders are demanding.
Wanafunzi ambao watajiunga na vyuo vikuu wasife moyo. Hiyo fees ambayo imewekwa, saa zingine watu wanafikiria ni mzazi university anaenda kulipa fees yote. Kutokana na ile model inasema ya kwamba over 90% ya zile pesa zitapeanwa na serikali, zingine zitakuja kama help na zingine zitakuja kama scholarship.
A section of leaders in Kenya now calling for dialogue to resolve the conflict happening in West Africa, especially Niger. Addressing the media in Nairobi, the African continental leaders said there is an urgent need to resolve the conflict in order to avert a humanitarian crisis in the area. They further congratulated ECOWAS leaders for their efforts this far in helping to resolve the conflict and looming crisis that could affect the African region and the world at large, more especially the country of Niger. This is the latest sign that the junta intends to resist international pressure to return power to Bazoum. And an airstrike has killed at least 26 people in Ethiopia's embattled Amhara region as the region continues to be rocked by deadly clashes. The strike marked the deadliest attack reported since clashes between the members of the Ethiopian army and a local militia known as Fano erupted in towns and cities across Amhara after months of tension. Prime Minister Abiy Ahmed's government imposed a 6-month state of emergency across Amhara on August 4th, and several cities remain under curfew, although violence ceased towards the end of the week. And recovery crews combing through homes and vehicles burned to a cinder in Hawaii are likely to find 10 to 50 more victims per day, according to the governor. The death toll grew to 96 Sunday, making this the deadliest U.S. wildfire in more than a century. Governor Josh Green said it could take up to 10 days to learn the full death toll. Nearly the entire town of Lahaina was destroyed in the fire. He added that all residents of Lahaina, home to 12,000 people, have likely escaped or perished in the fire. He said crews will likely discover more victims and that it will take time to identify them. I'm Dennis Aseto. Good morning.
.5 Spice FM, Kisumu.
If a man shows you its teeth, it doesn't mean it likes you.
It doesn't mean it likes you. It wants start. A liar calls as witness one who is either dead or far away. Say it in this.
Ben low, nin inte, nin there, ayu markati kadikta. You know this character called liar. He has disturbed people. So when you tell him who are your witnesses, he will take you to a place where it is difficult to verify.
For someone like me who sweats a lot, I cannot survive there. Sweating is biblical. Good. And he must blame it on Adam, not because Adam messed up and he was told, "No, you fellow, you by the sweat of your brow, thou shalt eat."
The Situation Room, Kenya's biggest conversation.
All right, at a few minutes after 8 o'clock, we're looking at traffic in parts of the city this morning. It's busy as you get towards Outer Ring and you're coming in from North Airport Road on right around the Eastern Bypass. Coming in from Cabanas, that's busy. It looks like it's going to be that way for some time. We're seeing some traffic also on Uhuru Highway getting out towards Haile Selassie at the junction and then out towards the CBD. Incoming traffic from Westlands is also doing the thing this morning. Getting into traffic hour later than normal today, but not too bad. It's to be expected. Less traffic on the roads. Some of it coming off Thika Superhighway just as you get to that junction coming in from Kiambu Road as well. We continue to see some movement. So a busy Tuesday morning, but nothing out of the ordinary and nothing unmanageable. We'll keep an eye on things. We are in traffic hour. Let's see what happens in a short while. Let's talk on Spice FM KE on Twitter.
Mature, intelligent talk every morning. Spice up yourself. Mornings done right. 94.4 Spice FM, Nairobi. This is The Situation Room, the home of hard-hitting political commentary and penetrating insights about the state of the nation. This is a talk radio experience like no other. The Situation Room, a place for hard truths, debates, and elevated conversations. The Situation Room, witty, political, engaging, deep, controversial. In the room, we have C.T. Muga, researcher, academic, seasoned political observer, a fountain of wisdom in these politically uncertain times. Ndu Okoh, Nigerian by birth, Kenyan by choice, communications expert, Pan-Africanist, a truth seeker and believer in people power.
8 o'clock,
And
getting into the third hour actually, of Kenya's biggest conversation this morning. Wherever you're tuned in across the country and indeed across the world, our live streams are up on YouTube and Facebook. And as we get into a power conversation this hour, thank you very much for joining us. Our guest for this hour is already seated. And as we get into that, engineer Joseph Siror is the managing director and CEO of Kenya Power, and I can already see the sparks are already starting to fly, literally, in the hot seat of Kenya's biggest conversation this morning, the Situation Room. Engineer, good morning.
Good morning, Du.
Good morning, Karibu Sana. I want to get into the conversation, but I want to tell you about DSTV. And even as kids are on holiday, getting into entertainment is a good idea. Into the wonder-filled world of entertainment on DSTV this holiday, and so much more that you can experience with your children. It's a public announcement calling on all children who've closed school for the August holidays. DSTV is calling upon you to never stop thinking and imagining. You are cordially invited to our wonder-filled world, packed with the greatest kids content from around Africa and across the world. Don't waste your kids' August holiday. Get connected to DSTV today and watch your kids expand their horizons with content that will inspire them to be more adventurous and fun. It's all on DSTV. Dial *423# or download my DSTV app to get a DSTV decoder with 1 month of family for just 2,999 shillings. So there's fun and there's sparks. Engineer, we want to welcome you properly to the show this morning, and CT will do that with today's proverb.
Yes, our proverbs for the whole of this week come from the country of Niger. We took a specific interest in West Africa because of all the turmoil they're having. And we thought perhaps if we now look at the proverbs that come from those countries, it may give us an inkling as to how it is they look at life, the influencing factors in their cultures. So the proverb for the day: you cannot shave a man's head in his absence.
You cannot shave a man's head in his absence,
No.
Engineer. What do you make of that? What do you think of that?
Of course, for one to shave someone, the hair is on his head, so you cannot shave him when the head is not there. Of course, the hair would have been on top of that head.
Okay.
Simply put, and very factual.
Right.
Okay.
You have to be there.
Yeah, you have to be there. This one is not something you can do by remote control. You physically have to be there.
Indeed. Okay, so we're getting into the conversation. Engineer Siror, there have been many questions. There have been many issues arising. Today we're looking at the higher than rising cost of electricity in the country today, and the many things around Kenya Power and exactly what the mandate is to supply and deliver and distribute, along the lines of some of the things that we've seen come out of the Auditor General's office. But let's start from the very beginning. I think we often confuse ourselves when it comes to power in this country. Let's start from the very beginning. What is Kenya Power supposed to do for us in Kenya? What is the mandate? What do you provide? What's Kenya Power's job?
The role of Kenya Power, or rather, there are three main areas of supply of power in the country. There are those who generate the power. Then there are those who transmit. Then Kenya Power comes in to retail or to distribute and retail. So the role of Kenya Power is to play that last mile role of supplying power to the customer or to the consumers, and also supporting them in the provision of that power. I do know that even currently as constituted, Kenya Power also does play a little role in terms of transmission of power. So we do have some transmission lines, and we also have the distribution lines, and finally, of course, the last mile, which is connecting to the consumers, billing them, and also supporting them.
Is Kenya Power the only one in the country who does that or plays that role of retailing and distributing power?
Currently, Kenya Power is the only off-taker, but in terms of the Energy Act, it allows multiple players. So it's not that it's the single off-taker by choice. I think it's more of a single off-taker by virtue of the fact that none others have actually entered into that space to supply that power. But it is allowed in the Act, in the Energy Act.
Okay. So the power that Kenya Power then retails and distributes, where does it come from? Who gets it from point A to Kenya Power? Who essentially gives it to you to then distribute and retail?
There are many generators in the country. The largest, of course, is the public utility, KenGen, where they have a number of hydros. They were the front runners, really. You wouldn't really call them front runners. Initially, it was all under one company, that is Kenya Power. And then, of course, it unbundled and KenGen started dealing with all the generations. There is also others like REREC. They are then independent power producers. So there are quite a number of players in that space. Now, after generation, one has to transmit. And that is where Kenya Electricity Transmission Company comes in. And I also did indicate that for the older lines, Kenya Power also has some old transmission lines. And so we come at the last end, but also we do have power which we import from the region. One of the countries we import from is Uganda, UETCL, and we also import from Ethiopia, that is AEP. Okay. So that is really the space of those who generate, and then there is the space of those who transmit, and then Kenya Power comes in to distribute and to retail.
Okay. Who determines how much power will cost? We get a bill, right? Or we buy tokens and then we see all of that. What role does Kenya Power play in telling us now, at the end of the day, this is what you've consumed, this is how much it's going to cost, or this is how much you've bought, and this is how we've distributed your shillings and cents? Where does Kenya Power's role in that come in?
In coming up with the eventual tariff that is charged to the end user, there are a number of players in that space. And the one who regulates that is IPRA. IPRA is the body that regulates that particular space. And in terms of that regulation, they are the ones who determine, for example, or let me backpedal a bit and say this. Different sources of power cost differently in terms of that generation. The cheapest source, I think, would be nuclear, which we don't have in Kenya. Now, in our context, the cheapest source is hydro. Hydro is the cheapest source. So when you have an hydro generation, you would always enjoy the lowest because it costs the least to actually generate using hydro. Then we have other generation sources like geothermal. We also have solar. We have wind. And each of them comes up with a sort of a tariff. In the far past, they were coming when first Kenya Power unbundled and KenGen came out. It was then necessary to agree on what they would be paid by virtue of that generation. And the instrument which was then used to come up with that figure was a PPA, which is a negotiated document. That is negotiation between Kenya Power and KenGen at the time, and also a very big role of the government in ensuring that the tariff that is then agreed is actually reasonable and each of the parties are well taken care of and that it's actually fair. But as time progressed, Ndu and Muga, there came a time when there was a very serious drought in Kenya. And by virtue of that drought, I think which happened somewhere between 1995 and possibly around 2000.
Yes.
The country, and this is the time when the financial donors or the financial institutions had sort of pulled out of the country. So, and they have been the main drivers, and we do really appreciate their support in terms of the major and the big projects for power generation. And now when they pulled out of the country was staring at a situation where there would be massive load shedding and or rather lack of power in the country. Yeah. And what then had to happen is that the government had to think very quickly, we need private investors to come in very quickly and invest. And because of that urgency, to get all these powers, of course, there had to be some quick negotiations, financiers who had to finance, needed to be guaranteed of their investment. So there are a number of discussions which went into that space, and that now saw other IPPs come into the space to provide the power.
Okay.
Yeah.
So they were invited to come in because of what you've said.
Exactly.
Right?
Because of a challenge that the country was facing.
Okay. Was there a regulatory framework under which they were then going to operate? Or because by virtue of the fact that they then came into the country to produce power which was lacking in the country, they were then allowed to do whatever they want. They dictated the terms and how much they would charge or how much it would cost, and entering into contracts which we now then are paying for today. How were they regulated, and how are they regulated to date?
I would say there was a regulatory environment, but like I said before, this was a situation that just emerges. So in terms of even the regulatory framework, it may not be as mature as we have it today. A number of times when you're entering into a particular matter for the first time, there are a number of factors you might miss, but definitely there were negotiations, there were parties who were negotiating. So it would not really be true to say that they would dictate, but it would maybe be true to say that at times when you are under so much pressure, there is the risk of you ceding some ground and not having a very high leverage in negotiating for the terms that you desire, especially if you are facing a very big challenge.
Okay. We're going somewhere, right? Engineer Siror. Now, fast forward to present day. The IPPs come in. They essentially are the savior, right? Because we can avoid load shedding in Kenya. Absolutely. You can avoid the lack of adequate power that can reach the country. They come in, they produce power. You then provide it to, the country. They pay for it. They get what they need. Everybody is happy. Until today, whereby more power than is being consumed in the country is available. Is it not? There's more power being produced in the country than is being consumed. Is that the case?
Theoretically, yes. Practically, may not be true.
So what is practical here?
When we give and we say that the power capacity in the country is about 3,200 megawatts, it is assuming that all the dams are full. It is making an assumption that at times may not be true. So there have been cases where, yes, you want to dispatch as much hydro as possible. But during a time even like right now, where there's been elements of drought, but it's now that the rains are coming in, you would want to dispatch the dams, but they are not there. So in theory, you have the 3,200. But in practice, on a particular day, you want to dispatch, and by the time some could not even be dispatching by virtue of the low hydrology. So there are a number of factors which at times make the practical different from the theoretical. Let me give you another example. We would say theoretically, for example, the electric and wind power will generate 300 megawatts. A cloud cover or it rains and it drops to zero. So yes, in theory, you would have counted 300 megawatts to be available. But in practice on that particular day, the 300 megawatts are not available. You talk about solar plants. They can generate 211, possibly in total, megawatts. Cloud covers, and all of them are out. So you would, at times, the reality vis-a-vis the theoretical is actually distinguished from that particular perspective. Or at times, again, some of the generators are out. They need to be maintained. So in the mix, you would have counted and you'll always be shouting that we have 3,200 megawatts, we have more power than we need. But in reality, many are the times when that is not the case.
Okay.
When we think of power, the production of it, the availability of it, I want to go back into history. People who were not in Kenya in 1995 may not realize it or may not know just how dire the situation was. We had power outages like a nonsense.
Absolutely.
It was disconcerting. In fact, you even when the government, Kenya Power, announced there would be power outages, there were others that they hadn't announced. So it was a fairly chaotic situation. But also, it is a time when everything that had to do with power, and I mean everything, was under Kenya Power. So IPPs, private, all these things were new. They were completely new. We had never had an experience of these things before. So into the situation that you describe, yes, people who understood this probably better than we do may have understood the benefits of it. But the truth is this. Every time you look at a situation in hindsight, there are things one is not likely to see, or one forgets the circumstances that we were in and what brought us to the position that we are actually in. But with the initial IPPs, other IPPs came into being. Now, when these other IPPs came in, what gap were they filling? Because the drought of 1995 was not a never-ending drought. It came to an end. Mm-hmm. And things stabilized, and we understood a little bit more about what needed to be done. But more IPPs came in, mostly during the time when President Kibaki was here. What gap or what role were these IPPs playing?
Yeah, it is good you've really captured, and I appreciate the fact that you have even assisted me to answer that question. in terms of the situation that was then prevailing,
he charges in tokens.
okay. Then I think we'll give you some credit in tokens, but that is not official because all the tokens have to be paid for. Now, yes, it is true, and you've really captured it correctly that it was during the time of Kibaki, and maybe you may need to fall back and say what was happening during Kibaki's time. And I think everybody listening would know that there was an economic growth. And whenever there is an economic growth, that is new industries are coming in, the new businesses are coming in. So that would entail then expanding the electricity network. Indeed, if you compare where the electricity network was when Kibaki came in and now, it is many, many, many times more. And indeed, during the last almost 10 years, the number of people who have been connected onto the grid are quite a number. And that would then, it would be obvious that then the demand for power will actually be increasing commensurate to that particular increase. Mm-hmm. So the new IPPs were coming in essentially to fill in the gap that was being introduced because of the expanding network, increasing industry, increasing population, increasing institutions. So when each and every factor of the economy is increasing, all of them, of course, need to be connected. And that is actually why the power demand would always increase. Okay. And we're even projecting this year that it may actually increase by 6%. Okay. And that 6% has to be catered for.
Now, as the demand increases, does that mean that the production of power also increases? Or are we saying that the power that is being produced, regardless of the demand increasing on a national scale, it's going to be able to cater for an increased demand?
Every generation has its capacity.
Okay.
Like if I give you, for example, Tarkwel, which is one of the most stable and one of the best dams in the country, its capacity is 106 megawatts.
Yes.
At inception, that is actually what it was set to produce.
Okay.
So it's never going to increase.
Okay.
Of course, it is possible at times to bring in newer machines and to increase, but that is not even something I've looked at. But definitely for every generation, there is the power that it can generate.
Okay.
So that is to say that it cannot go beyond that unless, of course, you change the technology.
Beautiful.
So that, yes.
So fantastic. So now, if that is the case, and we know that all of these generators, as it were, are set to capacity at inception. And that means that for demand, future demand, this is going to continue to produce at its capacity. Why do we see the continuous increase of power at the user?
I didn't quite get that, Ndu. Maybe come again.
If this generator, yes, at inception, we already know the maximum that it can produce at. You know that it will keep producing. It'll keep producing. It'll do that. Even if there's future demand, it'll keep producing, isn't it? We're not asking it to do more than it can, or say that, okay, now that we have more demand around the country, please Tarkwen do more, right? So there's a price that you attribute to a unit of power that an individual will use and pay for at their home.
True.
So now when you're adding more people onto the grid because of demand, why does the price then for an individual who was already using the power keep rising?
Okay, I think that's a very good question. Thank you so much, Ndu, for that question. When you look at what builds up into the tariff, there are a number of components. Indeed, the tariff that is passed to the consumer today is a summation of all the requirements for the energy sector. That is to say, it must take care of the cost of generation. It must take care of the cost of transmission. It must take care of the cost of distribution. And of course, that retailing, besides some levies which are to support some of the energy sector agencies, and possibly even the water bodies like Warma, which is again added, and then on top their taxes. Now, when you look at that, if you don't invest anything, if we were just to retain the investments as they were, say, 10 years ago, indeed, the cost of power would be quite cheap. And the reason being, the capital investment, addition is not coming in. But the moment now you start investing new plants, the moment you start expanding, then there is a capital injection that has to be recovered using that tariff. And it is for that reason that as we continue investing more into the energy sector, into generation, into transmission, because if you look at even how transmission was a few years ago, and where we are today, it is quite different. So all these investments have to find a way to be or to be recovered, their cost to be recovered using the tariff. But the beautiful thing, and possibly that is the assurance I can give, is that as the capital investment is being recovered using the tariff, there is a timeline within which it will be fully recovered. Once it is fully recovered, then it drops to the list. Like I can tell you today that the cheapest power source is actually Olkaria 1 Unit 6. I think it goes for less than 3 shillings. And the reason is all the capital investment that was used to construct it has been recovered. So the only thing that is remaining on the tariff is what is called operations and maintenance, the cost of maintaining it.
Who uses it?
Who uses?
Where does that power go from Olkaria, for example?
Okay, let me now possibly just explain this. That what ordinarily happens on a day-to-day basis is, first of all, there is what is called the National Control Center. The National Control Center would estimate the amount of the power demand using the previous records of what, say, we would consume tomorrow. Now, what would happen then, power will be dispatched according to the merit order. What we mean by the merit order here, first of all, we first of all take the ones which must dispatch. Once those ones are in, then you now look at which is the next cheapest cost to add in to the grid. So you keep adding from the cheapest until you have exhausted. But if at the point, even at any point, you are unable to deal with the power demand, then you will need to inject more and more and more. And at the tail end is where you actually have the thermos coming in to meet the shortfall. And let me also explain this and Muga.
Yes.
That when you look at our power consumption in Kenya, there is a curve. Like, for example, maybe right now, I don't know, but if I were to communicate to the national control, we may be consuming right now maybe around 1,600 megawatts. So at this point in time, we may be consuming 1,600. But by 9 o'clock, Ndu and Muga, we may actually have gone to about 2,000 or over 2,000. There is a curve. It varies from low to highs. And then from around 10 p.m., it drops almost to maybe around 1,500 again. By midnight, we are back to almost 1,000. And that is how the power curve is. So during the time when the power consumption is lower, then you may not need to dispatch the more expensive ones because you can meet that demand by just dispatching the cheaper ones. But the moment you start approaching the 9 o'clock, the 8, 9 o'clock, when the peak now is going above 2,000, you will have dispatched all the cheap sources, but you are still unable to meet the demand. So you have now to inject the more expensive ones to meet that demand so that you avoid the risk of load shedding anybody who wants to come in and possibly there's no power to dispatch. So that is really how the power is dispatched on a day-to-day basis.
I like what I've heard.
You like it?
No, because it means from today, 7 o'clock, I stop using power. I use a kerosene lamp.
Yeah, and it should be, then you still have your tokens left over in the morning.
In fact, I will not have a problem. I'll just be consuming the cheap ones. Following day, 7 o'clock,
put on the
everything
light.
Off.
Yeah.
Kerosene.
We use it. Engineer Ciro.
No, let me respond to that first. Let me respond to that. I want him to live for long. If he uses kerosene, I may not guarantee. He's such a good person we need here, so we don't want his life to be shortened because of the fumes of kerosene and all that. We really want long life for you guys. Yeah.
You want us to go on a break?
I do, but so is it true that if you switch off your lights then in the evening, then this token that you've bought is going to go a little bit longer for you if you don't use, because essentially what we're saying is that if you don't use your heavy energy consumers in your home at night, your token will go longer because now everybody is said to be on the thing using it at those hours between 8 to 11 p.m.
No, let me correct that. That, for example, last year, we sold 12,000 gigawatt hours. So what then happens to agree on the tariff after looking at all the revenue requirements for the sector is to say that what do we project to sell this year? If it is such that now it is 12,000 or 12,000 plus another 6%, of course there are the issue of losses, which I know is quite emotive, and I feel that we may have to go into that area in the course of this discussion. Now, if you add the 6% to that, we'll then assume that possibly we may sell about 13,000, and now we pick that 13,000 gigawatt hours and divide by all the revenue requirements to arrive at the tariff. That is to say this, and this is really the message I want to get out there, that if there was a way we can encourage more usage, and especially during off-peak, because right now you have a situation where there is generation now. If you talk about we have excess generation at midnight, I would actually agree with you, because when you look at what is being consumed vis-a-vis the capacity for generation, there is a lot of spare generation which we are not using. Now, if we could encourage each and every person and even the industry to make and even take advantage, because we even introduced a tariff called the time of use tariff, and the reason why we introduced that is to spur additional demand. So if we were able, for example, to push the demand so that we are not selling 13,000, but we now sell 18,000 gigawatt hours, it would then mean that we'll be looking at 18,000 gigawatt hours answering to all the revenue requirements, vis-a-vis 12,000 answering to that requirement. So if we can push the demand, definitely it would be possible to mitigate against the cost. So what Muga said is not very accurate. I would just encourage him to use more, and I also want him to live for long.
But we can borrow the truth. Okay. All right. Let's take a break very quickly and come back and continue with this. There are many questions coming up from the Auditor General's report. There are also questions about why it takes Kenya Power so long to come and replace a transmitter or even provide power after it's been paid for. It's Kenya's biggest conversation. In the hot seat, Engineer Siror, who is the Managing Director at Kenya Power, in the Situation Room this morning. Quick break. We'll be back in a bit.
This is the Situation Room, the only way to start your day.
Looking at traffic in different parts of the city this morning, it's heavy still on Landis as you go out into the city. We'll see some movement coming in and out of Jogoo Road, and that gets us all the way through towards the city. On Langata Road, not looking too bad right about now. We're going into the city and it's smooth and clear. Rilo Dingo way through towards that junction at the city mortuary, and then out towards Lavington if you're going that direction, Hurlingham in the other, out then towards Valley Road and touching on Kenyatta Avenue. It's clear, smooth, free all the way into the city, and then out towards the Thika Superhighway, inbound from the Thika Superhighway as well, not causing too much of an issue either. Spice FM KE on Twitter want to keep things moving this morning.
Sugar and spice and everything nice. Spice FM.
Spice up your life. Mature, intelligent talk every morning. Spice up yourself.
It's 23 minutes to 9 o'clock. Engineer Siror is the Managing Director, CEO of Kenya Power, and he's here with us this morning. I want to tell you about Choma na Ngoma before we get into this. Choma na Ngoma. Choma, those are things now you get in Choma, power, sparks, flying, fire, heat, isn't it? So it's Choma with the nyama and Goma with the music. And to 26th of August, let's go to Nakuru, because 2018, Choma na Ngoma was established by a Radio Maisha brand. It's an opportunity all about food, it's music, it's partying. It brings together music and food lovers for a night of fun and entertainment. This year, we're going to Nakuru County, and at the Rift Valley Sports Club Everybody's going to be there. Calligraph, Otile Brown, Ben Sol, Nadia Mukami will come out for a night of music, food, and total enjoyment. Tickets are 800 shillings. Get them on ticketsasa.com. Our power conversation continues on Kenya's biggest conversation with engineer Siror. As we go, continuing to look at the high cost of consuming power in Kenya today. As we come off the break, you were talking about the fact, like, if more Kenyans could consume more power, essentially what we are saying is that what you would pay would reduce, or at least you would be able to get more for what you pay, isn't it? Either way, the price would come down from that. But there seems to be an issue here, that there are losses that are realized between the transmission and the consumption of power in Kenya today, that there are losses. The Auditor General came out and said something, and she was very clear in her report, that 20% of the power unconsumed by us, the users, right, is still charged, and we pay for it. This is what she said. These would translate in Kenya Power's books as losses between transmission and consumption. The argument being that we, the end user, should not have to pay for these losses, but that between Kenya Power and the IPPs, you should be able to mop up those losses. Why does that cost then come to us? Now, it seems like a bit of a mess for people to understand. Could you explain how that happens? Why is there a 20% loss, and why are we having to pay for it?
Thank you so much, and really thank you so much for the opportunity to be able to shed light on that. Any conductor, any electric conductor has resistance. I want to make it as simple as possible. And the best conductor, for example, is silver. It's followed by copper. And aluminium comes in at 61% of what aluminium or what copper is able to. The moment you have any resistance in any cable, the longer it is, whatever conductor you use, the length of that conductor is going to determine the losses. So it is, if there was a conductor which is lossless, that means perfect conductivity, zero losses, you would actually, whatever you transmit is what you are going to receive at the very end.
Okay.
But the fact that we are using conductors that have a resistance, and maybe this is also something that I may need to clarify to the customers out there. Right now, Kenya Power, we have 345 substations. We have 82,000 kilometers of medium and high tension lines. We have 156,000 of low voltage lines. The longer the lines, the higher the losses. And so it is not, when somebody talks about the losses at 20%, it would appear to somebody that it can be zero. I would tell you it's impossible. Technically, electrically, it is impossible. Whenever you have conductors, there are losses. And you'll even notice this, that when you have a jumper cable for your vehicle, just extend it by double the length, and you'll notice it cannot jumpstart the vehicle.
You would not supply power to the end.
Yes, you will have losses.
Okay.
What would actually happen is, and the situation in the country, and maybe what I would possibly just assure the public is what we are really doing in that particular space. Let me give you an example. That there are a number of projects which currently the whole sector is doing to shorten the lines. Because the longer the lines, the higher the losses. You can't make them zero. But in the space for losses, there are two types of losses. There is what is called technical losses, which is by virtue of the conductors you're using, by virtue of the transformers, any equipment you use, any electrical equipment has losses. Even transformers themselves, they have losses. And now this is maybe something I may not want to give so much detail, but let me put it this way and do. That one always has to strike a balance between the cost and the losses you can allow.
Yes.
Like, for example, the best conductor, like I told you, is copper. But the moment you start using copper, it's very expensive. So most of our conductors are not copper. So the fact that we've already gone to aluminium is an indication that we are allowing certain amount of losses. Now, another factor that affects the losses is the thickness of the conductor. The thicker it is, the lower the losses. So again, because you want to make your infrastructure not very expensive, you have to strike a balance between how thick can I make it can I make my conductors to be without, again, making the cost too expensive? When you come to the space of transformers, they are very low losses transformers, but they are extremely expensive. Again, one has to strike a balance between what costs am I willing to forego in terms of the losses without making the project too expensive. Okay. But now, as an answer to that, because I would leave people hanging if I stopped at that point. One, and you notice there have been a number of investments in the energy sector. Let me give you an example. Right now, one of the most recent, maybe that was completed last year, is a transmission line we call Olkaria-Lesos Kisumu. Mm-hmm. The purpose of that line was to shorten the distance of power from Olkaria reaching Kisumu. And in so doing, of course, reduce the losses. And another thing, if you are able, and I know for those who are able to go to Western Kenya, you will actually notice it's a very massive structure, meaning the conductors are quite thick. And the reason being, you want to reduce the losses in that direction. Because as it is today, one of our biggest challenges are these very long lines. And let me give you the example. For you to supply Kitale right now, or even supply Kapenguria, and supply western part of Kenya, we mainly get power from Tarkwel. And that power from Tarkwel, just notice this. It traverses a distance of 220 kilometers to reach a place called Lesos. Mm-hmm. Once it reaches Lesos, it comes another almost 50-60 kilometers to Eldoret, a place called Rivertex. That makes about 200 and possibly 70 kilometers. Then you come at another 70 kilometers to reach Kitale, which brings it to almost 400 kilometers. So you are noticing that you are supplying a place, Kitale, which is only 100 kilometers, slightly more than 100 kilometers from Tarkwel, over a distance of 400 kilometers. Now, what is the solution to that? The solution to that is a project which is called Tarkwel Ortum Kitale, which reduces now the distance between Tarkwel and Kitale to only about 138 kilometers. So once that line is completed, that would mean you are then able to supply Kitale via a very short line and thus reduce the technical losses. Okay. Let me give you another example. For you to supply South Nyanza, which is one of the biggest areas really where we feel for in terms of the power quality challenges. To supply it right now, the journey traversed is you take off from, say, Olkaria, go all the way to a place called Kibos, go down 7 kilometers, that's about 300 kilometers, go to Kibos, which is another 7, come back to a place called Moroni, which is possibly about 50-60 kilometers, go to a place called Jemosit, maybe another 60 or 70, then go to Sotik, go to Gegati, and then go to Awendo. So if you look at the whole distance that you have traversed, maybe it could be close to 500 kilometers. Now, the project that is already planned is what is called Narok Bomet, which will just shorten, so that from Olkaria, you go to Narok, which is just about 60 kilometers, you go to Bomet, maybe another 60, and already you're in that direction. So you would have shortened that and reduced the losses. So there are a number of projects. Another project which is also earmarked to address that challenge is one which is called Sondu Omabay Awendo. Now, that project, the contractor became bankrupt, so the project was not completed. But we are engaging the sector, and that's really what I want to assure the public, that we are no longer seeing one another as competitors, as at times maybe that perception was there, but we are rallying together all the sector players. I'm talking about Ketraco here, I'm talking about Kengen, so that we look at what are our biggest challenges and how can we hack them. If not in the long run, what are some of the mitigating measures? And I would even want to mention a few. That right now, one of them we notice is because Lesos substation is not ready. I've engaged Ketraco, I've engaged the ministry, and I'm telling them, why don't we do a temporary work in Lesos so that instead of traversing, because one of the things that I didn't mention even in talking about the journey, is that as it is today, we have a situation where power flows from Olkaria, it goes all the way to Kibos, which is about 300 kilometers, like I said, goes to the 7 kilometers to Mamboleo, comes back to Moroni, and then it comes back to Lesos. And you know, Lesos from Olkaria is just 200 kilometers. So when you follow how it has traversed, it would have gone again 400 kilometers to reach a place that is 200 kilometers away.
Please explain to me this, because, you know, every place you're mentioning, I know.
Even Muhoroni.
Okay.
Well, I come from Muhoroni.
Okay.
So, as you're talking, I'm actually seeing the journey. You know, the distance is like from point A to B. But you know what we're doing? We're going here, then coming here, then coming here, then going here. But this is where we're supposed to be going. And then we go there. Why this pattern? There's some reason behind it, but I want to understand why this zigzag manner of moving power using the longest possible distance.
I think at the end I'll give you an honorary engineering degree. But for now, let me come with the answer. The main issue is there are certain projects which should have been completed and they were not completed. One of them is Lesos substation. Now, there was a project called Lesos Tororo, which was meant to complete the complex in Lesos. And that is really what has introduced that situation. But I was just explaining now why we are sorting. The reason why we are moving that very long path is because Lesos substation is not ready.
Okay.
But now, this is what we are doing as a temporary measure. We want to introduce a bay. For lack of a better word, we want to introduce a temporary transformer and a bay in Lesos, so that instead of now moving, like you have said, from Olkaria, bypass Lesos, and go directly to Kibos, and then go to Mamboleo, and then come to Moroni and come back to Lesos, what would then happen now is from Olkaria, we will just stop at Lesos, which is 220 kilometers away. And in so doing, we will actually have addressed the losses. Because like I said, the longer the line, the higher the losses. And maybe another factor I could have mentioned but I'm coming back to this, is the higher the voltage, the lower the losses. Whenever you double the voltage, you reduce the losses to a quarter.
Okay.
So that is to say then, part of the reason why that line was constructed, and it's a 400 kV line, is to elevate the voltages so that you reduce the losses. But coming back to answer you, the reason why we are going all that round is because the projects which were to ensure that we have shorter links have not been completed.
Okay.
And it's that lack of completion which has actually resulted in that situation.
With the losses, who pays for these losses as of today?
Put it this way. The moment you generate power and you transmit, there are transmission losses. The moment you distribute, there are also distribution losses. So what eventually becomes available to be sold is what reaches the end user. And that is actually what is billed to the customer.
So the end user pays for these losses?
No, he pays for the units that they consume.
Okay.
They pay for the units that they consume.
However, once power is generated,
yes,
whether it is by IPPs or whomever, it is paid for. They have contracts, isn't it?
Yes,
they will be paid for what they produce, isn't it?
True.
So at the end of the day, whether you who collects it is lost on the way, whether it's lost as you're going through all these many lines, at the end of the day, the end user who's putting on the light in their house pays for this. The question is, why can't the IPPs and the power generators shoulder those losses and they do not go to the end user?
Let me backtrack again. You recall, Ndu, that I said that when we consider, say, that last year, the units that was sold were 10,000 gigawatt hours. Now, it is that power, the 10,000 gigawatt hours, which has to pay all the sector agencies. Like I said, there is the cost for generation, there is the cost for transmission, and then there is the cost for distribution. So what is then passed to the customer, or rather in arriving at the tariff, you are looking at what are the units we are going to sell this year, and what are the tariff requirements for generation. And indeed, maybe for the sake of the public, almost 70% of what Kenya Power collects, they actually pay the generators. So 70% of all those costs go to generators. Now, once you've identified that this is the estimate of what we are going to sell in terms of units, that is what you now use to compute what is going to be the unit cost that is then going to be levied to the customer.
Okay, a big ticket issue here also is the fuel cost. Fuel cost is applied to our bills, and we see that it is because of that bills then go really high. We have an example of a bill, 500 shillings bought in August last year, got you about 25.4 units. In August this year, it's getting you 15.5 units. Same amount of money, less units by 10. The fuel cost, VAT, all of these things applied. Does Kenya Power have a role in that cost that we've seen, that huge change of cost?
No, it doesn't. The cost of fuel is usually, whenever thermos, there are actually mainly two components. there is the fact of once you dispatch the thermos, and I did mention before that when the hydrology, and you'll agree with me that the hydrology in the country has not been very good. When I talk about hydrology, I'm talking about the rains. And the dam levels. Now, when we have a situation where the hydrology or the dam levels are low, it then limits the amount of power that can be dispatched from the hydros. And whenever there is that shortfall, what really mainly comes in to fill that gap are the diesel generators. So that is to say, it will keep varying from month to month based on how much thermos were dispatched in that particular month to meet the requirement. The other component that actually contributes to the same is we have stations which are running on thermal generators. And one of the key ones, for example, would be the biggest would be Lodwar. Up to now, Lodwar is running on a generator. So that is to say their entire consumption is actually, or rather diesel is used to, or thermos are actually used to meet that need. But what we are doing, maybe from actually where I sit, is we've been brainstorming with my team to see what is possible. I know ultimately there are transmission lines which are planned for those areas. Transmission lines to ensure that the grid reaches there, and then they can be weeded off from the use of thermos. But also what we are doing from where I sit is, are there some temporary measures even of extending the low voltage lines to actually meet the demand? Like I said, it's not ideal for one to use the low voltage lines to elongate to serve very long distances.
So that's a Kenya Power issue that Kenya Power needs to sort out, isn't it?
The one for thermos?
Using the low grade, the low voltage lines.
No. That is a mitigation. It's actually a mitigation to alleviate that situation.
Okay.
But the ultimate is for a transmission line. And like I said before, the moment, let me give an example. If you use a 33 kV line, vis-a-vis using 66 kV, the losses in 66 kV will be a quarter that of 33. And when you use now 132 kV, which is the beginning of the transmission voltage, it's going to be 1 over, the other one was a quarter, it's 1 over 16.
Okay.
So where you use 33 in comparison with using 132, the losses in 33 is 16 times what you would actually have encountered for 132. But we are saying, but in so doing, we are willing even to extend, say, a 66, just to get them off the thermos. First of all, to address the issue of reliability and the quality of power. And number 2, to remove the thermal dispatch.
So what I hear you saying is that solutions to the problems that we are speaking of exist.
Exactly, they do exist.
But there will be a cost to providing the solution. So then the question, if I may peg it to what Ndu had asked, who then will pay for these costs? Because the solution is not beyond us. That's clear in my head from what you're saying. It is possible for people to receive cheap power. It's possible for us. That switching my lights off at 7 o'clock doesn't need to occur. Okay? So now,
how?
The how is a good question, but my real question is this. It's something that it befuddles me. Why does it take you, the MD of Kenya Power, to come and explain something that could have been explained a long time ago? Because the optics are that Kenya Power is fleecing us. That's the optics. When we had 20% in my head, my consumption has been increased by 20% immediately. I don't want to hear Ketrako. I am not interested. I don't want to hear Kengen, because my bill comes from Kenya Power. So,
and then on the bills, we don't even actually see anymore where all of the percentages go to. So then we see
then I'll
the
fill
fleecing is even.
I'll fill in the blanks for me, myself. I will say they have removed all the details they used to give us because they want to add 20% immediately. And then I will go ahead and write an article and say precisely that, which is what I did on Sunday.
Voila.
Okay.
Thank you. I really appreciate the fact of this, the need for this engagement. We should be engaging more and more. On the issue, first of all, of reducing the content, this is a democratic space, and there are a lot of customers who are telling us, you are boring us with too much detail. Just shorten this. And we heeded their call. But also for those who want to get the details of the bill, they just need to use 977#, and you'll actually star 977#. And you'd be able to get all the details of your bill. Yes, I think in terms of the conversation, The issue is that there are a number of things that need to be done. And maybe let me also appreciate what the government is doing. We are actually encouraging even PPPs to do some of the transmission lines. So we are encouraging, or rather the government has been encouraging private sector participation in terms of putting some of the critical lines that need to be done. There is a document in the government which is called Least Cost Development Power Plan. The Least Cost Development Power Plan gives a detail of all that need to be done to address all the challenges in the energy sector, going all the way to 2040. The lines that need to come, the reinforcements that need to be put in place, and all that detail is available. And what the government has been doing through the Ministry of Energy is really to encourage even the private sector to come into that space. And maybe just to assure also the consumers that going forward, one of the ideas that is really being sold, and maybe it is also very useful to understand even the dynamics of the region, there is what is called the East African Power Pool. And in the East African Power Pool, this is a concept where you want to link the power pools from, there is one which is for South Africa, there is another one for Western Africa, and there is also now what is called the East African Power Pool. Ultimately, all these power pools are going to be connected. And where the future is moving towards is a regime which is called the energy auction, where instead of having farm contracted capacities, people will actually be auctioning their power and saying, this is the amount of power I have and these are the prices. And of course, looking at where it's generated and where it's required, those are the things that will determine then who is actually going to dispatch. So in terms of that particular aspect, yes, we are encouraging the private sector participation. But even importantly, there is also an aspect which the public can come to play in this particular space.
Right.
I did mention that there is what is called technical losses, but there is also what is now called commercial losses. And this is where really even the members of the public can assist us. And these commercial losses are the ones which come mainly as a result of, say, illegal connections. People have connected themselves directly. And so they are using power that is not metered.
Yeah, and it's essentially illegal.
Exactly. That is so that those illegal connections actually do contribute. And then the other thing that does contribute to also the challenges is the vandalism.
Sure.
Vandalism has a heavy toll on us. I do remember a week ago, I think, where we lost about 7 transformers over a weekend. And you see, when you lose a transformer over a weekend and you look at the losses over the year, the number really has to be compensated for.
Engineer Siror, it's, I think, imperative that you come back. There are many questions, many conversations that need to continue around power in this country. Good that you were here with us this morning, and we're going to extend the invitation for you to come back another day, isn't it?
Absolutely.
Engineer Siror is the Managing Director and CEO of Kenya Power. Thank you for being a guest on Kenya's Biggest Conversation. Until the next time, asante sana.
Thank you.
It's 9 o'clock.
An interview with Radio Maisha, Nakuru said that loopholes in KEMSA have been addressed and that now KEMSA is stable.
I am very sure, 100% sure ya kwamba we have the right board ambayo inaelewa nini inafanyika, inajua ni nini ambayo tunataka kuhakikisha ya kwamba kila hospitali iko na dawa, iko na mambo yote ambayo yanahitajika kwenye hiyo hospitali.
At the same time, the CS said that the government has already facilitated access to healthcare through digital platforms that ensures that healthcare is accessible to all.
Kuhakikisha ya kwamba tunatumia teknolojia, ya kwamba tuko na teknolojia ambayo inaweza angalia kwa mfano hata dawa kwenye nini kama iko available. Tunakuwa na teknolojia ili kwamba daktari yule ameketi kwenye hospitali kuu anaweza toa huduma kwa mtu ambaye yuko wapi mashinani.
On NHIF, Nakuru said that despite the government reducing the cost of healthcare through the insurance platform, Kenyans who are on the policy is law asking that you up your game and embrace NHIF by registering in large numbers.
Kenya sahi ni vizuri niwaambia kwamba insurance iko chini sana. NHIF coverage yake iko chini sana. Wakenya sahi tuko over 50 million, almost 55 million by now in terms of population. Lakini ukiangalia wale watu ambao wako covered na National Health Insurance Fund ni wachache sana. Labda ni robo tu peke yake. Kwa sababu wengi ni wale ambao wako katika kazi.
Leaders in North have asked President William Ruto not to allow himself to be boxed into working with opposition leader Raila Odinga, led by Kinyoro Ward MCA Andrew Kipeke. They warned Ruto that if he agrees to working with Odinga, then his supporters will chart another political course.
Hatuwezi kubali watu kuja na ajenda yao ya kusabaratisha ajenda ya rais wetu ya taifa la Kenya. Na sisi tukiwa wafuasi ya William Ruto, na mimi naambianga rais, ile siku utasema ya kwamba unataka handshake na Raila Odinga, mimi kama kipekee nitakuwa mtu ya kwanza kupinga wewe. Sisi nataka rais hakikisha ya kwamba taifa la Kenya imeweza kunawiri kiuchumi. Kuhakikisha taifa la Kenya haiendi kwa madeni tena. Sisi tunamshikilia ili aweze kutimiza ndoto yake ya kuhakikisha taifa la Kenya imeweza kubadilika. Na mimi naamini William Ruto atabadilisha taifa la Kenya. Mpe miaka miwili, uchumi itakuwa imenawiri.
He added that the ongoing negotiations between the government and the opposition must focus on economic issues, IEBC, the creation of the office of the opposition leader and that of the Prime Cabinet Secretary, as well as ensuring the National Government Constituency Development Fund is enshrined in the Constitution. Now, PS Technical, Vocational and Education and Training Esther Thara Moria has instructed the heads of technical training institutions to adopt the system used by the students who apply for a loan from the Higher Education Loans Board. Speaking in Mombasa, Moria pointed out that after students are registered, they usually have to go to help website and send applications. As soon as COOPS completes the screening process for those students and finally selects those who will get the loan, the principals will have to contact COOPS about the application.
After you give them that admission letter, again, they will go to the same portal because now they have an admission number and they will apply for funding. And HELP will do the means testing again and place them within the 4 categories and fund them accordingly. What you as principals will now do, whether before the funding or not, because I have already said the two are not related, is please give COOPS a return.
Chairperson of the Principal Association, David Mwangi, said the numbers of trainers is low, which affects learning. Hence, something needs to be done to change that trajectory.
We have been informed that we have trainers who are in universities, and those trainers are not able to train in those universities, and they were recommended to be taken back to our institutions. Madam PS, you know that we have a shortage of trainers, so if this process is actually fastened, we can be able to reduce the shortages we have in our institutions. We have been talking about the Trainer Service Council. That one has always been recommended. So once again, Madam PS, we can also be able to fast track this one. We have been looking for it, and it is now in the Presidential Working Party.
Former U.S. President Donald Trump has been charged with attempting to overturn his 2020 election laws in the state of Georgia. He and 18 others have been indicted on counts that include racketeering in a 41-charge document issued by a Fulton County grand jury. The indictment marks the 4th time Trump has been criminally charged this year. He has denied the accusations in all cases. Fulton County District Attorney Fannie Willis launched an investigation in February 2021 into allegations of election meddling against Trump and his associates. I'm Dennis Asada. Good morning.
All right, a few minutes after 9 o'clock, and we're looking at traffic. Different parts of the city coming in from the Thika Superhighway. That has not given us problems this morning at all. Just a little bit at the Pangani Underpass, getting through towards the CBD. A little bit of it coming off of Cabanas and then going towards the North Airport Road and then out towards the Eastern Bypass. But apart from that, I think we're fine. A smidgen of traffic coming out of Wayaki Way and into the CBD is probably where you see the most of it right about now. Landis was heavy from morning, still is as you get towards Kamkunji, but that'll fizzle off as you get towards Haile Selassie. So traffic has not been a problem today. We're getting out of traffic hour in about half hour. So let's know what's going on where you are. We've kept Tuesday morning moving. Let's continue doing it. Spice FM KE on Twitter. Let's talk there. Keep things moving this Tuesday.
This is The Situation Room, the home of hard-hitting political commentary and penetrating insights about the state of the nation. This is a talk radio experience like no other. The Situation Room, a place for hard truths, debates, and elevated conversations. The Situation Room, witty, political, engaging, deep, controversial. In the room, we have C.T. Muga, researcher, academic, seasoned political observer, a fountain of wisdom in these politically uncertain times. Ndu Okoh, Nigerian by birth, Kenyan by choice, communications expert, Pan-Africanist, a truth seeker and believer in people power, and Eric Latiff, agent provocateur, the man in the chair, seasoned journalist, news hound, a man who believes in punching up, not down.
It's 7 minutes after 9
This is the
o'clock.
Situation Room, the only way to start your day.
Conversation today, and we've been looking at a number of conversations today. As we get into the final lap of it now, we are getting into our final talk for today, but very interesting about what we're going to be discussing. Before we get that, let me tell you about DSTV, who says that it's the August holidays and you can come into loads of enjoyment on Nickelodeon, on the Disney Channel, on listening to Alvin and the Chipmunks, CT's favorite trio of little, what are they, rodents? They're rodents. I call Alvin and the Chipmunks, and they do this world tour of music. CT's been enjoying it ever since the August holidays. Children and children at heart enjoying the wonderful world that DSTV has to offer. All you need to do is dial *423#, or download the My DSTV app, and then you get onto the thing. 2,999 shillings for family for a month. Enjoy all this wonderful TV viewing while on holiday and beyond that with DSTV. All right, petty offences are an issue in this country. Rather, those who commit petty offences and do not get a stab at justice is an issue in this country. And our guest for this hour, already seated in the hot seat today, he's no stranger to the Situation Room. Gilbert Mitula Omware is here with us, a pro bono lawyer, academic and consultant in human rights, criminal justice and legal research. Gilbert, good morning.
Good morning.
Good to see you again.
Good to see you too. Thanks for having me.
You're well?
I am well.
Okay. CT wants to extend a hand of wellness. CT wants to welcome you to the Situation Room this morning with today's proverb.
Right. Our proverbs for the whole of this week come from the country of Niger.
Okay.
If Ndu hadn't been here, I would still be calling it Niger. Okay, but show me that the river is River Niger, and that River Niger is actually in Nigeria.
It is.
Believe it or not. Then there's this country, written Niger, but pronounced Niger.
Yes.
Okay. You cannot shave a man's head in his absence.
Can you?
You cannot.
Can't.
How do you see it?
Unless he was beheaded first.
Now that is an interesting perspective, isn't it? If head, body separated, you can shave. That's very true.
After all, the Prophet did not say that he still must be attached, did it?
You know, that doesn't fall under the category of a petty offense, does it?
No.
No, that would be capital, wouldn't it? But you agree, you have to be present, you have to be in the space.
Well, you know, the head is still part of the body, so he's still there.
He's still there. Okay. It's good. It's okay. Yeah?
It's okay.
The Nigerians were onto something. Were they not?
Yep.
All right. Gilbert.
Yes, please.
Again, having a legal conversation, a justice conversation today. And petty offences. We've had conversations about this many times. We've not able to do it justice to the point whereby we see that justice will be felt and done. But that's probably because maybe we do not understand exactly what is going on and to the level to which, according to you, maybe as you explained this a little bit to us, that folks' human rights are actually being trampled on.
Okay.
All right. So petty offences, let's get into it from the very beginning. What is a petty offence? How do you say that what person X has done is petty in comparison to what another has done?
What are you asking? How do you become petty with your offense?
Or how are you just petty? But what is a petty offense?
Yes.
I think that's a very good question. Why? Because even now, from a legal criminal justice perspective, of course, there's been a struggle to define what a petty offense is. It's not defined in law. The closest that we've come to defining a petty offense is in the Constitution in Article 49, where it talks about that a person should not be held in custody if in a situation where they committed that offense, they would be sentenced to a fine only or a maximum of 6 months imprisonment.
Okay.
So, in essence, then it is defined by what the consequences of committing that offense are. Of course, it is in contrast with a misdemeanor and a felony. If it's a misdemeanor, then of course the imprisonment is for not more than, actually the penal code specifically says a misdemeanor is defined as an offense that is not a felony. Then the penal code then defines a felony as an offense that is not a misdemeanor and that attracts a term of imprisonment of 3 years and above.
Okay.
This word misdemeanor, what is it? What's a misdemeanor?
I think we have struggled to define specifically because we don't have a definition in law, except that a misdemeanor is not a felony. So essentially, the way the drafters of the penal code took it was that they defined the felony. Then anything that was not a felony was a misdemeanor.
Okay. What is a felony?
Yes.
That's now what I've just said. A felony is an offense, and indeed a serious offense that attracts a term of imprisonment of 3 years and above.
Okay.
And then it's outlined.
Yes.
When you do this and this.
Exactly.
Felony.
It is a felony.
Okay.
So now in the penal code, you will find a scenario where it defines offenses as felonies as it goes along.
Okay.
Right.
Can you define these things for us so that felony seems to be at the bottom of this particular ladder?
At the top.
No, at the top.
At the top, meaning it's the worst possible thing you can do.
Misdemeanor is at the bottom.
No, actually, petty offense.
Petty offense is now even bottomer than
misdemeanor. Than the misdemeanor. Because it is the felony which is very serious. So all the way through offenses like robbery with violence.
That's felony.
That's felony.
Rape.
Those are very serious. Exactly. Though rape is a
Capital
felony.
offense.
Yes. Capital offenses are offenses that attract the death penalty.
Got it.
Or the possibility of a death penalty.
All right.
And stealing government finances and robbing the government coffers.
So long
where
as
does that fall in?
So long as when you see, because a criminal offense is not an offense unless the specific act is defined as sanctioned by law, and then after that a penalty is assigned to it.
Okay, you know where I'm going with this and why I'm asking about government coffers and public funds is because at the time we write our penal code, it is based on the understanding of the times and the experiences of the times.
The truth is that our penal code is imported from India.
All right. Even if it was imported from Mars, it is still okay. It is what we use. But it isn't cast in concrete to the point where we cannot change it, is it?
That's true.
Okay?
Yes.
So, when certain things become endemic, like for instance, pilfering of public funds, okay? And we look at our penal code, our penal code treats it in a certain way. But when you look at the effect or the consequential effect of that particular activities, it is so dire that sometimes I think that what I have been told in the penal code is insufficient. It should be looked at perhaps as being more adverse than it is looked at. Now, is there a process by which that can be changed? I'm going somewhere with what I'm saying.
It's already there. In fact, economic crimes, the anti-corruption and economic crimes, and the Act is specifically there to define what those are, and it's totally separate from the penal code. When you are charged with corruption-related offences, it doesn't come under the penal code.
It's not a criminal offence?
It is a criminal offence, but not all criminal offences are found in the penal code.
Why not?
You see, because, as you say, there are contexts and circumstances that attract specific measures, right? For example, that we have a serious problem with corruption. So instead of relying on the penal code, which is a general code of criminal offences, we now designed a specific act for it.
To deal with it.
Exactly.
And does
that
it deal with it
exists
effectively?
already. So it does, I think, to some extent. When we talk about, say, corruption-related offences, of course, the anti-corruption sleuths and magistrates and prosecutors and so forth will talk about the challenges that they face in prosecuting. And, of course, realizing the realities of political dimensions of corruption and economic crimes. And the fact that those can be very real challenges for those who are...
Why I ask if it is actually adequate is one should then see the consequences of breaking those particular laws, and one should see the effect of it. One doesn't. Once he reads conversations about it, we hear people going to court. But the end result of that process usually is not commensurate with the crime that these people went to court, were taken to court for in the first place.
I think that, look at the sentences that have been handed down by the High Court and by the Magistrates Court, for example, in terms of the fines to Waluke and so forth. You look at the value of the fines.
Waluke is just one.
That's one. But
are there others? When you look at the amount of money that we are told we lose on a daily, not yearly, daily basis, there ought to be a lot more people. In fact, the amount of money that is attached to whatever it was Waluke was charged with, it is minuscule. It's a drop if you compare it with what else. So these are the people whose names come up from time to time, don't come up. People whose names come up are in court. The cases are then forgiven, or for some reason something has happened. They are no longer there.
I want to. It's very important because in the criminal justice system, when we use terms, for example, like a very important term you've used is forgiven. What does forgiven mean? Or disappear over time. What does that mean? There is actually a word for it, and there is a procedure for what you're talking about.
Yes.
Because the thing is this, and that is what circles back to petty offenses, that the trap of the criminal justice is only there for those, or is largely there in Kenya for those who don't understand what is going on. If you have enough legal advice and you understand the system, then you will understand this is the process that I'm going through, these are the options that I'm facing, and these are the likely outcomes. Let me give an example of this question of forgiveness. In Kenya, of course, through the Office of the Director of Public Prosecutions, we introduced what we call plea bargaining, right? And plea bargain is a situation where an accused person who's charged with an offense can approach or be approached, but often approaches the prosecution, the DPP, and says, you've charged me with this offense, but you have a plea bargaining policy that allows me to be able to plead guilty to a lesser offense or plead guilty to the same offense but at a lesser sentence, with certain options like restitution, which is returning the money that I had stolen, or like any other things, or community service and so forth. And so what happens is that then it's a deal making and negotiation process where these people, the accused persons, then come, they negotiate with the prosecutor and they say, look, I don't want to go through the criminal trial, I will plead guilty to this matter, or I will request for you to withdraw it, but often it requires a guilty plea. And once I've pleaded guilty, I'm going to pay back X amount of money. I'm going to do 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and you'll give me a lesser sentence, like a non-custodial sentence, and I don't have to go to prison for this. So that means that you have entered into the deal, and the deal is sanctioned in law, and that allows you to move forward. That is what you call, now you would interpret it outside as forgiveness. But what is forgiveness inside is a plea bargain agreement where this person has pleaded guilty, has a record, and will meet certain conditions that are not just between the prosecutor and the accused person. They have to be sanctioned by the judicial officer, whether it is a judge or it is a magistrate, who then supervises that whole process to make sure that it falls in line with the law, and it meets the ends.
So where does the
justice.
presidential pardon come in?
The presidential pardon comes much, much later, because we have what we call the Power of Mercy Committee. POMAC. So what they do is that by virtue of the Constitution of Kenya, have the mandate to be able to make recommendations to the president in 3 ways. They can say either that the president can suspend a sentence for a certain period of time or indefinitely, or they can recommend that a sentence is lowered, or that they can recommend that a person is completely discharged. So they then they make decisions about various offenders who are already in custody, already serving sentences, and then say, we think these are the people that the president needs to do what? To forgive or pardon. And then the president takes their advice on the basis of their advice then.
Does our constitution then have some sort of structure within which what you're saying is operationalized?
There is an act of
That
Parliament
deals with it
that
specifically.
manages this entire process, that manages who is in the Power of Mercy Committee, how does it function, how the recommendations are made, and so on and so forth.
All right.
And it's always on the advice of this committee that the president makes these decisions. The president can't make them unilaterally.
Is there a limited number of people who can be pardoned?
No.
Okay, good. So, when we talk about petty offences, and these petty offences seem to focus mostly on young people, because it's young people who, for some reason or the other, end up being incarcerated for what would qualify as petty offences.
Yes.
Now, would you then say that a committee such as this one, do they ever look into these? Because we look at, say, the remand. We look at the cells that we have within our police stations. Do they look into these things, and do they consider that perhaps instead of congesting these centers that we have, that particular aspect of the law could be applied?
Yeah, I think that's a good question. Can I answer it in a structured way so that you follow?
So
my
are you
reasoning?
suggesting that I did not ask it in a structured way?
No, you did.
Yes.
And so the question is, I want to answer it in a structured way in this way. Number one is we acknowledge the reality of the fact that we are in the middle of, and still will continue to be in the middle of a youth bulge until 2030, right? That we will have youth between 18 and 35, even all the way actually, the ones in the median at 15 will be the majority of Kenyans, have been and will continue to be, but those numbers are ballooning. That means that to that extent, the people who are more likely to interact with the criminal justice system are youth. We'll agree just on the basis of
I agree with you. I'm in agreement.
Now, if we go back to the tenure of Chief Justice Emeritus David Maraga, he said in one of his speeches that he acknowledges the reality that, number one, justice is skewed towards the youth and also the poor. And
justice is skewed towards him or
away from the youth and the poor, right? To the extent that that youth are the ones, poor and especially men, so the male, are the ones who are more likely to come in contact and in conflict with the criminal justice system at any one moment. Our prison population as at January, for example, was 58,000 in prisons that have a capacity of 34,000.
Collectively, countrywide?
Yes.
Okay.
58,000 prisoners in a prison that has prisons that have a capacity of 34,000. The reality is that this did not stop anyone, the police, from arrests, people being sent to prison and so forth. And there is an increasing push, and I can remember, I think sometime back in May, Chief Justice Martha Koome saying, or issuing a directive, not just saying, that we should have decongestion. So that means that all the people who are there for petty offences, we should find reasons to either suspend their sentences, turn their sentences into community service orders, or in other ways, if there are people who are pleading guilty or already being sentenced, that those sentences should be probation orders, community service orders, non-custodial sentences in general. All that notwithstanding, and of course I have also seen an article online where 7,000 petty offenders were released by the PS for who is in charge of prisons, and that was in response to this whole issue of the large numbers of young people, petty offenders who are in prison. Still, petty offenders have been found in research to be the largest majority of people who are in custody, and mostly because they are vulnerable in multiple ways. They are vulnerable because of economic-related crimes, and when I say economic, it's that they are trying to just get by. They are hawking, and so they are constantly going to be arrested for these kinds of things. Or one of the most notorious ones is the Alcoholic Drinks Control Act, where a majority of women, in fact, at some point there's a study that said 75% of the women who are in prison are there because of the Alcoholic Drinks Control Act, that they are making what is termed illicit brew, or it is unlicensed, and that they are then being arrested and sent to prison because the fines related to that particular offense are really high. They cannot trace them, so they end up in custody.
Okay. Why do they remain? I think because this is where we're seeing the problem here. Why do they remain in custody without certain things coming out, like bail, for example? You mentioned something that probably alludes to this, is that for lack of knowledge, for lack of understanding about how the system works and what they then would be privy to, or what then would be theirs in terms of rights, they do not know. And that is why then they do not pursue them. So why do they remain in custody? Because now we're saying remain in jail, remain in remand, as it were, and then don't get bail or remain then, or then even transferred to prison sometimes on petty offences because of certain things they cannot pay. Why?
The reason is this. Number one, because there are two stages. Stage one is bail stage. Stage two is sentencing.
Yes.
So the first time that you'll ever come into custody, you are arrested, you are taken to court, your charge is read to you. If you deny the charge, then of course you are given terms. You are given cash bail options. If you cannot raise the cash bail, then what happens? You are sent to custody as a remandee. And your trial commences. And the trial can be fairly lengthy if witnesses are not coming. At the end of it, if you are not able to adequately defend yourself because for various reasons you don't understand the law, you don't understand those provisions and so forth, then what happens is that you will be sentenced. Again, if your sentence is a fine with the alternative of a custodial sentence, if you can't raise the fine, then you end up in prison custody. So this is what is happening, that the money is being used in such a way that it is a barrier to access to justice if you cannot afford it. For example, if you tell, let's use an example of me, 50,000 cash bail, or you stay in custody, I'll quickly make calls. That same day I'll raise that 50,000, I'll be able to leave. But if you tell somebody whose monthly rent is 1,000 shillings, whose annual salary, if you look at it, is not more than 50,000 shillings, to raise that same amount of money, they will obviously not be able to raise it. And there are no measures that are put in place. Of course, cash bail is set in accordance with the nature of the offense. And there are many instances where people are given cash bail that is lower, or they are given free bond because it's a petty offense, but that does not always happen.
All right, let's take a break at this moment. We're talking about petty offences and then why folks are stuck in this system for lack of knowledge, and then what to do, I guess, is one of the questions that we want to look at this morning. Talking about that today. We're coming back from this break. Quickly take a look at weather and traffic, and the conversation continues thereafter that. Choma Nangoma on the 26th of August in Nakuru County, and we're saying we're going out there to enjoy food, music and partying. This year's Choma Nangoma will be the 4th edition, and it'll be happening out of Nairobi for the first time. The date for this year's edition is the 26th of August. It takes place at the Rift Valley Sports Club in Nakuru. Artists Calligraph, Otile Brown, Ben Sol, Nadia Mukami, Father Moore Saru and Nyeri Viri. Tickets are available at www.ticketsasa.com for 800 shillings. 24338. That's the code that you send the word Choma to for you to win a pair of tickets to Choma Nangoma.
Isangapi bwana Simba?
Isaya Zigen Shako.
Isangapi bwana Simba?
Isaya Garbage Boy na Trash Can.
Isangapi bwana Simba?
Isaya Henry Danger.
Kila saa ni saa ya fun na enjoyment na Go TV. Go TV kuna show za kubamba watoi wa all ages na familia yote. Furahia Garbage Boy and Trash Can kila weekday at 5:45 p.m. on Cartoon Network. Halafu ujinaize na Zigo and Shark at 6:45 p.m. on Cartoon Ito. Nayo weekendi ni ya kujinaize na Henry Danger at 6:45 p.m. on Nickelodeon. Dial *423# to get and stay connected to shows moto za kuchachisha August holiday. Go TV, love it.
Oh, finally! It's my Standard Courier delivery.
At Standard Courier, we know that your time is valuable. That's why we guarantee swift and efficient deliveries to your doorstep every time. Give us a call on 0793 599 684 or schedule your next delivery by visiting our website www.standardmedia.co.ke/courier. Trust Standard Courier service for all your courier needs. We deliver with pride.
Business News with Spice FM.
I'm Dennis Aseto. Safaricom will increase the daily transaction limit on M-Pesa from the current 300,000 to 500,000 shillings after getting a regulatory nod from the Central Bank of Kenya. The changes are active for all M-Pesa users. The higher transaction limit is set to boost businesses, especially small ones, as the use of cashless transactions grow. The Kenya Revenue Authority has begun an online auction of goods that have overstayed at the Mombasa port. KRA welcomed members of the public to submit their bids on an online portal that will end on Sunday. Some of the goods put up for auction include motor vehicles, computers and construction materials, among others. An MP wants Shylocks that are charging borrowers exorbitant interest rates to be regulated amid outcry from loanees. Kericho Women Representative Beatrice May has filed a motion through the National Assembly's Departmental Committee on Finance and National Planning to regulate predatory lenders. May argues that these moneylenders do not adhere to the Consumer Protections Act of 2012, which seeks to protect consumers and prevent unfair trade practices. African early-stage investor Founders Factory Africa has raised 20.7 billion shillings in capital to support more founders across the continent. The funds came from the Mastercard Foundation and Johnson & Johnson Impact Ventures, an impact fund within the Johnson & Johnson Foundation. Its previous investments came from Standard Bank, the Small Foundation, and Netcare. Kenya is set to host a high-level dialogue with the United Nations Conference on Trade and Development tomorrow. The conference will bring on board a government delegation that will be led by Prime Cabinet Secretary Musalia Mudavadi. UNCTAD Secretary General Rebecca Greenspan will also grace the function. For Spice Business, I'm Dennis Aseto.
Spice FM Business. Spice up your life. Mature, intelligent talk every morning. Spice up yourself.
It's 27 minutes to the top of the hour, and heading through this conversation. Welcome to Morning KTN News. At this time, we're having a conversation about petty offences and folks who are stuck in a system for lack of knowledge and, in many cases, lack of money or the needed funds to be able to get this done. Helping us have this conversation is Gilbert Omwari, who's a pro bono lawyer and an academic, as well as a consultant in human rights, criminal justice and legal research. So as we were taking that break, Gilbert was saying, look, things happened. A petty offence was committed, and for two things. One, can't make the bail, or if you get to the sentencing stage, cannot pay the fine, right? Mm-hmm. These are the reasons that then essentially get you stuck in the belly of the system, and you're just kind of there hanging around. Nobody's really hearing you. Does the law provide for an alternate? Because here, if the justice system states that, okay, petty offence, a minimal bail for you to get out, what are we talking about now that is unaffordable by a lot of the people who are in that system today?
I think there are alternatives, but it depends on how you are assessing your risk. Number one, the minute you're arrested and you're charged in court, which a lot of people take, they plead guilty. Right? They just go and say, I know I did not do it, but it's so much easier for me to just accept that I did this and move on. That way, I don't have to deal with the whole drama of going through a trial. That, I think, is an option that has come up for a lot of people in various kinds of cases where they hope that they're going to get lenient sentencing and that they hope they're going to get non-custodial sentencing. In many situations, especially in relation to petty offences, they do get it. They get community service orders, sometimes probation orders, especially if it is really, really petty offences like the drunk and disorderly, community service orders. Even though loitering, I've not seen much of it, community service orders as well. But at the end of the day, with the more serious the offence is, the more likely you are to want to fight it. So,
but are you telling me, sorry, Gilbert, yes, are you telling me that today, let's look at some of these petty offences, some of the ones that you've mentioned, drunk and disorderly. So you had a bad night, had too many drinks, you're doing some business out in the street, right? You get rounded up by the police vehicle, you're taken in because you can't explain what it is that you'd be doing, right? Or even loitering. Loitering means you're just hanging around Moy Avenue, just not doing anything and can be arrested. Okay. So then you're taken into custody and then you're charged in court because it's an offence. Within 24 hours, we understand that's what you must be presented. As is prescribed by the law. You must be in front of a competent court. I don't know that there are other courts, but in front of a competent court within 24 hours. if you plead guilty in this, so you plead guilty or you plead innocent, whatever the case may be, then in order for them to release you before a hearing date or all that, you pay what is called bail.
Yes.
Right? So that you can go home.
Yes.
Now, when you can't pay and what would be the bail for drunk, just as an example, drunk and disorderly?
It could be anywhere between 5,000 and 10,000.
Okay, pay 5,000, 10,000 in order for you to go home. Let's say you cannot do this.
Yes.
You would essentially be retained as a guest of the state until your court date.
Yes.
Okay. Yes. Now, court date, they say, okay, slap on the wrist, don't do that again because of whatever reason. Now pay a fine or go to jail for a month, right? Would you still have to pay the bail? No, because you obviously you stayed.
And also remember, bail
there.
is completely refundable.
Okay.
And also remember, if, say, for example, you are fined and you are given, say, 2 months imprisonment.
Yes.
So you are told a fine of 10,000 or 2 months imprisonment.
Yeah.
It is calculated for each day that you are spending in custody, the fine reduces.
Okay.
So if after 2 weeks you're able to find the money,
then
they
10,000
calculate
less
to
that
you.
amount.
Yes.
Now, you mean to tell me that there are people today
Yes.
who are languishing in remand
Yes.
because they could not pay this amount? Let's even say, because they could not pay the amount
so many.
of the sentence, right?
Yes.
And the system has not seen it or deemed it fit to have a conversation about what can be done. Community service, non-custodial, etc. Is that what you're saying?
I think the conversations are happening at various levels. There are conversations happening, for example, at the NCAJ level, which is the National Council and Administration of Justice, and through their committee, which is NCCJR. I think that there are also conversations that are happening at the judiciary and at the executive. The problem is when these conversations are being had, are they specifically also listening to these people who are suffering the consequences to understand how did you get here? What are the other avenues of support that we can give you? What makes people like you end up in custody? And then shift the conversation back to the executive or the state and say, what measures can the state take to make sure that the people who are on this pipeline of ending up in the criminal justice system will actually have options or alternatives? For example, if it is somebody who's drunk and they're an alcoholic, that is somebody who needs treatment. That is not somebody who needs imprisonment. If it is somebody who, say, for example, is walking on the street and strips naked, that's a mental health issue. That's not a criminal justice issue. How do we decriminalize, which is the effort now? How do we de-escalate situations where people come into contact with police officers and are in a situation where they're likely to be arrested? How do you de-escalate and how do you move it away? Do the prosecutors, for example, recommend that a warning is given to somebody instead of charging them because there is a question on decision to charge? There is a prosecutor that must approve every single charge that is drafted now. So that prosecutor, what responsibility do they have to say these are people who should not be here? But I have to add a last thing, the financial implications of this conversation, because the reality is this: if we are saying that we are giving fines and we say fines, where is that money going? In fact, is there a quota for that money? And is there a budget that requires that money? Because that's an economic conversation. And furthermore, there is a political economy of this whole system of the criminal justice system. Somebody will say, instead of you going to court, give me 5,000 shillings and you're out.
Who is somebody? And where is this money going?
If we say, well, when I say somebody, I mean, of course, police officers, right? Who arrested you is the police officer. And they're the ones who will have conversations with you. We've had various conversations. For example, if you listen to the Social Justice Center's working group and the accounts that they have, that in places like Dandora, for example, young people are just picked up in a lorry all night. And then they are told, you'll stay here. Call your families. The family that is able to pay, what do? You are released, you go home.
Stay where?
In the police cells.
Lorry.
In the cells. And you will then be charged in court the next day.
Charged with what exactly?
For what?
And in fact, I have so many clients who did not know each other until they were told, you two have been charged with an offense. I have so many, not even one, that I can name.
Can you give us an example of this said offense that warrant you being
Let me give an example. And it's not a petty offense, as a matter of fact. It's a serious offense. I have a client. Let's call him John. John was, he had tarmacked the whole day, the entire day with his father. They were looking for jobs, manual jobs. At the end of the day, only had 50 shillings. Went to the shop to buy eggs. Got home, the eggs were bad, took them back to the shop. On his way back to the shop, he had his eggs, spoiled eggs in a jug, and came across police officers, and they told him, come, squat there. He found a group of young men. It was at night, at around 7:30. And at that 7:30, they are all gathered, and they are gathered for some time, and then they are taken to the cells. Once they end up in the cells, of course, nobody came for him because nobody knew that he had been arrested at that time. He lived alone. The next day, he ends up in court, and he's told, whatever you are read to, you just accept. Just say it's true.
Who tells him that?
The police officers. They say, yes, just accept what you are charged for. And when he gets there, he's told that you are charged with the offense known as preparation to commit a felony. And that you are found with a knife preparing to commit a robbery. I worked on that case myself. I'm not talking about something I don't know. I worked on that case all the way from 2019. Eventually, my client was released much later.
When?
He was released, my client was released, I think, in 2022.
From when?
2019.
From 2019.
2 years down the line.
Yes.
No, 23.
Yeah, 3 years down the line. He was released in 2022. And when he was released, the reason he was released is because no witnesses came in court.
I'm puzzled. I'm sorry,
Yes.
Gilbert. All right, let's go back to Dandora in the evening.
Yes.
All right. He's picked up.
Yes.
Was it there? It was Dandora.
Yes. Dandora.
He's picked up with eggs in a jug. All right.
Yes.
He's told squat here with folks.
Yeah.
And then he's taken to jail.
Yes.
In the
To police cells.
To the police cells.
Yes.
Okay. In the morning.
Yeah.
He's then taken to court.
Yeah.
And before the session begins, he's told, whatever you will be charged with, accept that you've
accept.
done it.
Yeah.
So he says, yes, I will accept.
No.
He says, no,
I will not.
I will not accept.
Yes.
So the charge sheet is read in court, and the charge then becomes
preparation to commit a felony. He was found with a knife.
According to the charge sheet,
Yes.
he was found with a knife.
Yes.
Okay, so he denies the charge.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
What happens after that?
After that, you go to trial. So I found him in custody because as a pro bono lawyer, part of the work that I was doing was going to custody to look for clients like these who should not be there.
But in the court, after court, at that point when he's denied this charge, does he then go back to cells?
He now transfers from police cells to prison custody. Yes,
Was
as a
there an
remandee.
option for bail?
So the option for bail is there.
Okay.
And the option for bail at the time, if I can recall it, was I think 50,000. By the time we were, because it's a felony at this point, so preparation to commit a felony is a felony in law. It's section 308 of the Penal Code. So so once it's a felony, then of course he has to raise the 50,000. We talked to the family when I came across him. He says, they say we don't have this money. That's not money we can raise even in our wildest dreams. So after some time, we worked hard and tried to reduce it. It still didn't work. They couldn't afford it. And we had to go through the entire trial process over 3 years of constantly saying, where are the witnesses? Where are the witnesses? Where are the witnesses? The witnesses did not come. Eventually, he was released by the court.
For 3 years?
Yes.
Okay. Now, how many, and I think this is the question here, how many folks do we have in the system who are in this similar, if not the same kind of position?
There are very many and
don't have representation.
That don't have representation are very many, actually. So what does the data tell us? The data tells us that 80% of the people in custody don't have lawyers. 80% of that 58,000 that I told you do not have lawyers, do not have access to any legal services. Of course, then that challenges the question of our legal aid system. And how many people are in a similar situation like him? And you know the beautiful thing about this is that there is data for this. If you go to because the prosecutors and the courts have what we call returns. Offences that are withdrawn under Section 87A of the Criminal Procedure Code are all offences where the prosecutors procedurally are saying we cannot find witnesses for this case. We cannot find anyone who will come to testify, so we are compelled to withdraw the charge because we could not be able to sustain it. But this person can be rearrested again any time later and be prosecuted for the same offences if the witnesses come up. So it will continue to hang over your head.
Why would the police want to, I mean, it may sound like a rhetorical question, but why would the police want to place an alleged crime on an individual who was just walking around minding his own business?
I think for various reasons.
Why?
I think number one is this perception of who a criminal is and what security is. Security is that the police are working, that people are being arrested and taken to court, that the courts are functioning. That gives a sense of security. That is just a way in which it's done. Number two is obviously the blatant over-policing of the most disadvantaged people, right? That if you look at, for example, Makadara Law Courts, which is the largest court in East and Central Africa, it's handling up to 30,000 cases in a year and is handling the majority of police stations in Nairobi. It's handling very many. So to that extent, there is very clear over-policing. But I also think that there is an economic question, and economic on the side of the more the police are there, the safer businesses are, but also that this is a whole system that then the police can benefit off of through corruption and through bribes and so forth.
Okay. We don't live in Kenya, and then the justice system lives on Mars.
Yes.
Judges, magistrates, prosecutors, lawyers, everybody is aware of the social system. Now, if with this awareness of the social system, we still see individuals languishing in jail because of this matter, then it begs the question, why is that awareness not turned into some kind of action to make sure that we can see other things happening beyond individuals languishing in the cell?
I had a conversation with a certain senior of mine, a senior advocate, who told me about a school of thought known as legal realism that says justice is what the judge had for breakfast that day. And if you go back to how judicial officers and even judges may see their role in the administration of justice, a lot of them would say to you, my job is I come, I see the evidence, I apply the law, I meet the outcomes of the law, and after that I move on. This is a job for me. I am in an assembly line. Charge sheet is here, witnesses are here, I take their testimony. I do an assessment, it's a formula, it's mechanical.
I apply.
And that is what a lot of judicial officers would say.
So that's the letter of the law.
That's my job. So for me, all this context that you're talking about doesn't really assist me, because for me, I'm only doing what I'm here to do.
But we've been told before here that, oftentimes when making a judgment, a judicial officer will take into consideration the social atmosphere, right? So it's not just, well, maybe in word and deed, we're talking about two totally different things. So it's not just an assembly line. That they're going to take into consideration the atmosphere. They're going to take into consideration what might be happening with this individual's life, especially when we look at things like single mothers who has thrown garbage and then she's arrested by, city council officers, and then that case is then escalated. The judge will take that into consideration. So are we saying that truly the justice system, because of numbers or because of this formulaic activity, are just going through the motions and not taking into consideration the social atmosphere at that time?
I think the results speak for themselves. Because if we were having a contextual conversation on who should and should not be in custody, on considering what the context of the people who are in custody is and whether they have people who can take care of them, the reality is a lot of the approaches or lenses through which people are seen as, this is a criminal. I need to be very careful. This person will run away if I give them lenient terms. I need to be very careful. This person might go and harm another person. But not necessarily the context of that these are fellow Kenyans and that we want them to go and also serve and also take care of their families and also build the nation just like I'm building the nation. I think that there is a constant conflict at that boundary of what is required of me as a judicial officer or as a judge who's seeing something in context, plus is what is required of me by the tenets and requirements of the law, and how do I balance the two to make sure that I am not just administering justice but doing justice at the end of the day. But also to continually ask ourselves, is justice really found in courts? But that's another conversation, and it's a much bigger conversation.
What would be the ideal situation with what we are seeing now? like you said, there's data to inform these opinions that we have. There's data to inform the things that we see in terms of numbers of folks who are in because of 1, 2, 3. What would the ideal situation be? Somebody's accused, charged, convicted of a petty offense, right? What would then be the next thing?
I think at the end of the day, the thing is, we have to have very careful conversations about balance, because it's a system. And at the end of the day, we don't expect any system to be perfect. There is no perfect system. And I think the question is about how do we improve constantly? How do we grow constantly? And what does that growth look like? In that context, I would say that an ideal is to be able to have as much data on a person as possible before they enter the criminal justice system. So at the point where they are arrested, there should be a requirement that we capture data like what is their mental health situation, what is their family situation, and so forth. That is captured later, where a pre-bail report or a pre-sentence report is given. But there is there is so much that has already happened at this stage, because somebody will have asked for bail reduction, then the report is ordered, and then later you learn about, okay, so this is what is happening with them and this is what is going on. But the question is, what data is captured at the beginning and how does that inform decisions? Because of course, judicial officers don't make decisions in a vacuum. They have to make it with the best information that they have. Unfortunately, the best information that they have is the information on the experiences that they've had. It's not the information on the person who's standing before them. And that, of course, is a challenge in and of itself.
When you look at the numbers that you speak of, we're talking about very many young people incarcerated for reasons that on the face of it may not necessarily, what's the word I'm looking for, require that sort of action. There are conversations that have been had regarding retraining of judicial officers and retraining of members of the police service. Discussions. Would it help in any way? Because see, it's like there is a system by which certain members of the police service function.
Yes.
Okay? It has nothing to do with the law. It has to do with the appearances of what they interpret as a good way of appearing like they're doing their job.
Yes.
Whereas, in actual fact, it's an extortion process that they have for ensuring they extort money. Okay? I look at the judicial system. I'm looking at the magistrates' courts. And it's like an assembly line where you're looking at a list. What has been presented before me? What is it? And you simply go through the process without interrogating the individual and this person who's actually in front of you and actually figuring out what exactly happened here. Does this person have a story to tell? Or am I just going by what I've been told and that is adequate? Now, would the consideration for training or retraining make any difference in ensuring that not that a semblance of justice is actually served, but that justice is actually served in the best way possible?
I think that the question of training goes into core beliefs on what justice is, what administration of justice is, what it looks like to have a proper functioning criminal justice system that responds to the needs of Kenyans, instead of just a train that has already gone off the tracks and is running, and it's a runaway train now. In terms of judicial officers, I do believe that they are constantly trained and retrained. And at the very least, my experience, though I'm not a judicial officer, but I will always go to court, and sometimes I'll say the court is not sitting, the court is away on training. So I hope that training is helping. And of course, they have their colloquiums. So yes, there is training that's going on. And of course, we have the Judiciary Academy, right? So that serves its component of training. The problem is around, let me tell you one thing, especially about petty offenses. Once a police officer has arrested you and you are in the system, getting out of that system is the most difficult thing.
Why?
Why? Because the discretion that is exercised by a police officer at the point of arrest already raises the question of a probable cause, and already raises the question of the likelihood of an offense being committed. And the system therefore deals with you as somebody who is likely to have committed an offense and is likely then to escape, is likely then to suffer consequences, is likely then to avoid the ends of justice, and should be held within that system until the point when they ascertain or they certify it.
You know, every time I hear a conversation about a system, I sometimes wonder, at what point have systems become devoid of human action, human activity, human thought, human practice? I mean, these are people who are operationalizing this whole so-called system.
Have you read The Trial by Franz Kafka?
Yes, I have.
Now, The Trial is a brilliant exposition of what everyone sees themselves as part of the system. There are so many examples in Kafka's book of this whole reality that people do not see themselves as part as humans, but as part of a functioning system where they fulfill their role and they move on. They fulfill their role and they move on. And that is a way in which people are able to rationalize their existences.
Okay. But my brother, surely Kafka's book exposed something that is at the heart of what I am saying. When people become cogs.
Yes.
Okay?
Yes.
So they are no longer human beings.
You lose humanity.
No, it's gone. That's why this word system is something that I find a bit abhorrent, because the moment you bring it in at the center of a conversation, humanity out of the window.
True.
The spirit of the law out of the window.
True.
Okay? So that then everything becomes excusable within the boundaries that we have set. And that is why, you see why I mentioned the retraining. I don't see the positive effect that it brings. This is really what I was trying to say.
I agree.
Okay? This thing of rebranding and changing uniforms of the police, which is supposed to be a behavior change component into the whole, it achieves nothing other than just changing the uniform.
Do we see any movement in the direction of the NJAC, for example, in trying to have conversations around sorting out some of these issues?
I think there are, but there is a route that we have never really addressed. And that is the colonial route of our criminal justice system, which imbued its values and its thoughts. For example, if we are talking about this whole question of humanity and how to treat each other better, do we adopt the systems that we've already had and try to repurpose them to fit that, or do we reimagine it? And I believe, yes, for example, from the NCAJ and the judiciary point of view, there is the alternative justice systems approach that takes justice back to the community, that looks at restitution and reconciliation in the community as the ends of justice and not just the punishment and the retribution. And so there are efforts, and I'll say that there are efforts, and some of them are good, some of them are not there yet, from the NCAJ and from other criminal justice actors in terms of improving what this situation is.
It ought to be. It leaves us on a note of thought, doesn't it, this morning?
It does, it should.
Gilbert, thanks for joining us this morning. I mean, more conversations to at least, shed light on what is actually happening, in spaces where you and I may not exist today, but may know somebody, will know individuals who are in that situation. Look, we're saying that justice for those who do commit crimes must also be served.
Yes.
Right?
Agreed.
But we're also saying at the same time that the law also provides for those who, going about their business on a daily basis, find themselves on the wrong side of the law, not because they meant to hurt anybody. And that justice should also be applied in that system. Can't all be lumped in the same place. Worthy conversations to continue having, and we thank you for joining us this morning to have that conversation.
Thanks for having me. And
thank you all for joining us on Kenya's Biggest Conversation this Tuesday. We talk again tomorrow at 6 a.m. Have a wonderful rest of the day. It's 10 o'clock.
Spice up your life